I'm feeling good. I'm feeling comfortable. I'm feeling ready. I have to do my vocal exercises. Excuse me. Sitting by the trenches of a long, dark dock. Gamer would totally play Doge 2048.
Good, because this one sure loves to. I played it again yesterday. That's not the thing I wanted to talk about, but
we were going to talk about the... Well, it's...
If we want to talk about the 3 stuff, 2048 is going to come up, and I'm going to talk about Doge.
It's April 3rd, 2014.
This is Idle Thumbs 152. I'm Chris Remo.
And I'm Sean Vanneman.
And we are joined today by our frequent friend, well, our constant friend and frequent guest, Danielle Riendeau of Polygon.
Hi, it's really good to be here. I'm glad to be a constant and a frequent guest and friend.
Yeah, I'm also glad.
You're my favorite guest.
Well, thank you.
Oh, man.
Going out there.
I'm pretty happy about that.
Implicit burns happening right now.
Nah, they're all... I mean, but it's like... You can still have your best out of a sample size of things that you think are all good.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like Junior Mints out of all the wonderful kinds of candy you can get at a movie theater.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
You are the Junior Mints of the podcast.
Yes. I'm so happy about that.
The Balboa Theater.
The podcast Junior
at 25th Avenue. The Balboa Theater at 25th Avenue in Richmond puts their Junior Mints in the freezer before they give them to you.
Whoa.
Because they love you.
Yes.
That's
so
crazy.
if you are in San Francisco,
I mean, I
that
guess
is
it's not crazy.
that is
I
a
just
little
never
tip.
noticed it.
That is my neighborhood theater. They're very good. They're very nice there.
They did a Kickstarter.
They did. I backed them.
I backed them too, and I
never
never like captured my rewards.
You should capture
I mean,
them.
it's not their fault.
You should catch them.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Did they not send rewards? Was this
Well, I
like
don't
you
know.
have
They
to
just
pass
go there
or
and you
something?
get
go there and they have your name on the
they have
list.
your-
Yeah, I just gotta
you
go
go
do
there
it.
and you get movie tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only
So
reason I
that's
did
movie
it
tickets?
is because I wanted to have my name on the lobby of a movie theater, and I knew it was the only way.
How much did you donate to get that?
I don't know. 3 digits.
Because I gave them $100, but I don't think it came with that.
There's no way I gave over. I don't know. Maybe it was 150. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, this is the only time in my life where that's ever going to be an option for me, where I can have
Of
my
course.
name in the lobby of the
Yeah.
theater.
Uh-huh.
So I'm
I don't think you
I'm not
should
gonna
stop
like
there.
be a patron of the ballet. I mean, I would if I.
Yeah.
It's a fiscal thing, not a.
If you
not
had
a,
tens of thousands of dollars to
be a patron,
bequeath
Yeah.
to the arts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So video
Also,
game.
Jake's not here.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah.
Jake is.
That's true.
Jake is doing an embedded game development seminar in Hawaii. Yeah.
That sounds wonderful on all counts.
Oh,
No,
actually.
Jake is actually just in Hawaii
we'll
with
put
his
the-
girlfriend.
We'll put the fruitful results of that seminar up on the blog.
Yeah.
That'll be equally as valid as all the other things we claim we'll put up on the blog. You have no way to prove that thing isn't real simply because it doesn't end up on the blog.
That's
We've
correct.
been a little better about that recently, actually.
I think so.
Blog.idlethumbs.net.
It's a place you can go on
There's
the internet.
something on it, probably.
Yeah. You've been playing. Obviously, you've been playing a lot of
yes.
games.
Oh, yes. I'm
I
always
don't know if I want
playing
to jump
games.
into the game that I've been playing because I love it.
Yeah?
But we can maybe talk about your stuff
I
first.
played a couple of games that I've loved recently.
I saw that
Yeah,
on
like what?
Twitter.
Yeah. Okay, so I played Scapegoat 2, which is a wonderful
Oh, yeah.
puzzle game.
Yeah.
We're kind of weirdly like co-published by Double Fine.
Yes. I didn't actually know about that until after my review went up, that there was this publishing deal going on. But yeah, it's Magical Time Bean, as in like black beans or
Like pinto
legumes.
beans.
Yes, exactly. Not beam.
Kidney beans.
Yeah,
Lima
exactly.
beans.
Wait, okay, so
Beans.
this is like a time travel platformer thing. I actually didn't play the original Scapegoat.
Well, it's not. There's not really
Scapegoat.
time travel.
What
Yeah,
did I say?
You said scapegoat. Like scapegoat is
I thought
escape.
I said a
that's the
scapegoat.
brilliant joke, of course, is that you're a goat because you're a scapegoat. You're basically playing this cute little purple goat, little dude. I don't think he really has a name. It's just goat. You know.
It's a scapegoat.
Goat is actually short for
name
greatest of
is
all time
Escape.
in the game. It's goat is
Yep.
Greatest what of all time?
just greatest of all time.
Oh, sure.
I like it.
Yeah. There's another layer of meaning, I think, to the game.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
there's
aren't
there's a
really
lot there.
applicable.
There's many layers. This game is like an onion.
It's an onion of metaphor.
We made the same joke. I'm so happy.
I'm not.
I'm so
That's okay.
yeah.
What do you do in this video game?
So in this video game, as the purple goat, known as Escape, you basically have to escape a series of rooms in this weird giant labyrinth of puzzles. Every room is sort of a single screen puzzle. It's a platformer, but it's much more of a puzzle-oriented platformer. And you also have a rat and or mouse helper. I really don't know if it's a rat or a mouse. I couldn't figure
You said
it out.
and, though.
Wait,
Could it be both?
Am I just making up the part about time manipulation, or is
Yeah, there's
is
not
that,
really
like,
any
not-
time manipulation.
Oh, why did I? Where did I get that
Maybe
impression?
maybe from the developer's name, Magical Time Beam.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a combination of that and then effects I saw in the trailer that I just assumed were.
There's
don't know why-
warping.
I don't know why I
Yeah.
You
thought-
can warp, which is essentially time travel.
Yeah,
if you think
Yeah.
about it.
that's true. I guess it's like localized time travel.
The
Technically.
fourth dimension is pierced in some way.
Yeah,
So I guess it works.
that's true.
Yeah,
It's just suddenly pierced,
it is.
rather than. I'm not going to extend this metaphor because it's going to start getting gross and weird. Cool.
Yeah, it's a really good game. It was really, really fun. You know, I probably played it in maybe 5 or 6 hours. It's not like a huge, massive time investment.
Pretty decent for like
Yeah.
a puzzle platformer thing, though, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think so. And there's plenty of bonus levels too. I mean, that was sort of, you know, critical path
is there?
blasting through.
So I guess one of the things that I'm curious about when I see games like this, like I saw the trailer for this that Double Fine made, and it was like a lot of it was like crazy, kind of hilarious Double Fine
Yeah,
two-player production
hijinks.
shenanigans, but also they showed just gameplay footage a bunch at the end. And I don't like. I would totally try this game, but also I don't. There are so many games that kind of loosely fit into the category of kind of indie puzzle platformer now
Sure.
that it's hard to know like. Okay, what's the actual identity of this game? Like I kind of
That's
in
a
my
good-
brain for
it's a
some
very
reason
good way
like
of putting
just
it. Yeah.
decided it was time travel, and I don't know why. I mean, that's obviously just wrong.
Yeah.
But you know, when you think about Braid, like that game is really, gameplay wise, that game is really constantly inventive. But like the levels introduce new mechanics frequently, but like everything fits under this kind of thematic time manipulation aegis, and like it feels. The whole thing feels like of a piece and feels like it's like really
But you know what, though? I
exploring
think
this thing
Braid's
in a lot of
identity
detail.
from the outside before you play Braid is really sort of like all over the place, other than like the time, the
Sure.
actual, like they have like an actual.
When you say from the
hourglass.
outside, you mean like
Like
just to look
if you were
screenshots
just looking
and
at it
stuff?
from a marketing perspective,
Yeah.
but like Braid essentially created this genre of like indie
I don't know if
level
it created it,
indie level
but it's
puzzle
sort of,
platformers.
it's certainly like
It popularized it.
popularized
for sure,
it. Yeah.
I mean, the puzzle platformers exist, but like small team indie puzzle platformers. I mean, what was?
I don't know. I'm
I
just
don't think
I'm
anything
just
came
not
before
willing
that.
to like make a claim like that unless I feel like I actually. Have.
Well, I mean, I'm at least for
reason
like the popular audience when it comes
That's what
to
we're
being
saying,
able on Xbox Live and
popularized.
things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Right?
I
It was
think
the
that's
first
fair.
one for
Yeah.
that you could just download and play out if you only had a console.
Sure.
So I do think it popularized the genre.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. When I
so
look
like
at Braid,
you can't really hold it up the same way because I think if Braid came out today, it would have a lot of identity issues when it
think
comes
so?
to.
maybe
I think once people started talking about it and playing it, you would get it would get great
So,
word of mouth.
I
But
guess
when you
the
look at
reason-
it as like a brand, when like what
I
is
don't-
that little
see,
guy?
Well, maybe
Like the art isn't super appealing. Like
I disagree.
it's a hard thing to communicate.
I don't. I guess I just don't feel that way. Like I think Braid gets more scattered. Like in some ways after you dive into it, and there's all the kind of like fuzzy sort of narrative stuff that I don't think always entirely hits. But like I think just glancing at bits of it, at least for me, the color palette I really liked. The sort of weird interpretation of kind of Mario-esque proportions. I actually like the art in that game a lot.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that game feels cohesive visually, and I don't think I had that problem, but who knows, right? Like I don't know. also probably was aware of a lot of the stuff going on around it at the time. So maybe that it wasn't. I am not even capable of looking at it from the perspective you described. But in any case, like that aside, I am curious, like what makes this? Is this game just like? Because when I look at the footage from a Scapegoat, the thing it reminds me of, and I don't mean this in like in a pejorative way. I don't mean this like to discount the game in the slightest. But I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is like something I would play on like Newgrounds or Congregate or something, where it's not. I feel like those, I don't know, forums, like those locations are really good places to try something that could have a really strong mechanical hook without necessarily like needing all the other parts of the game that you would usually have to sell someone an experience for like $20 or whatever. Like all there and making a case for themselves. Just
you mean like its creative identity?
Yeah, like I've played a lot of games like that on places like Congregate and Newgrounds that are essentially puzzle platformers because the investment to like start just moving the character around the screen is next to zero. And they're games that if I just saw them on Steam, I may not necessarily go be like, oh, okay, this as like an entire total work just at a glance appears to be so compelling that I want to go through the process of like going through checkout, downloading it, like launching the executable, like playing it.
I mean, the amazing title doesn't immediately grab you and make you think, oh, I've got to make that go to Scape.
Yeah, so the reason I don't want to say this as like a negative thing is because I don't want to create the impression that like I don't think developers should charge for their work or anything. I strongly believe that developers should, like, you know what I mean? I don't have a problem paying for games. It's just that this is a genre where there are so many amazing examples of it at like every level of kind of investment required to get into it that I just don't know how to react when I see a trailer like the one I did for Scapegoat 2, because I'm like, okay, I mean that looks like it could be cool, but like I don't know.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Like there's certainly a feeling like there have been times in the last couple of years when I've, gone to an indie puzzle platformer and been like, okay, an indie puzzle platformer, as if that's that's one game, an Uber game, and everything and just kind of slots in somehow like that. I mean, I think Scapegoat 2 really, it sets itself apart in ways that aren't going to be visible in sort of a trailer, or especially a wacky Shenanigans kind of trailer.
Yeah.
It's just really, really incredibly well designed.
Okay.
Like, and it kind of does that thing that a really great puzzle game does, where that sort of amazing design is invisible. Like you don't get the sense that like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do the second I walk into this room. Instead, you're experimenting, you're trying new things with your mouse/rat friend, whatever animal it is, whatever small rodent it is. And it's always sort of rewarding that experimentation. And I don't know, I just feel like there's a very distinct sense of being, I felt almost as if I was in sort of like a Zen flow state the whole time I was playing this game. I was like, okay, I'm figuring out this mechanic. I'm figuring out how to warp. I'm figuring out how to use the mouse, rat, whatever, to my best advantage. Like I just felt smart and I felt empowered the entire time I played. So it's partially just really good design and polish. And obviously it's a tiny team.
That's totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tiny team. I think maybe 3 or 4 people made this game, and there's a very distinct sense that this was made by a very small team that kind of iterated and iterated and iterated and play tested and play tested and play tested and made something that felt really good to play, basically. Cool. So that's a good game. You should play that game.
It sounds like maybe I should.
Yeah.
If you enjoy, oh God, that's the worst thing to ever say, right?
If
you like the genre.
Yeah. If you're a fan of blank and you really find yourself liking blank, then maybe you'll like.
Yeah. That's the thing I'm never allowed to say. I think Arthur, if he
fans
ever
of the
listens.
genre, you can't.
Fans of the genre.
You can't use those four words.
Yeah, I'm forbidden.
Also, we'll
that.
find a lot to love here.
Yeah, you're gonna find like you're digging in the mud. You're gonna find a lot to love. Yes, God, it's really compelling.
Yeah.
There's many words we're not allowed to use.
Good.
It's good. It's a good thing.
It's good that you have that kind of style guide. Actually,
yeah.
I remember it was actually kind of I mean. Maybe I've brought this up on the podcast before, but I don't remember what age I was. But I remember at some point when I was like old enough to care about what the New York Times style guide might say about things.
So like 8 or 9. And
fuck off.
Chris Remo.
2.5.
I remember I was probably in college, but whatever. I remember seeing just in some unrelated interview or something with someone who like was an editor at the Times or had done reporting for them or was a staff writer there or something, talking about just in an offhanded way about like the list of cliches that they like turns of phrase essentially that they maintain, that it's like you can't use these unless you have a really, really powerful reason to do so, because these have been so thoroughly beat into the ground that it's just not doing anything for anyone. Like, it's not doing anything for the reader. It's not like illuminating anything. Everyone's seen this before, and there's no reason to, like, if you're a writer, you should be able to express your thoughts in a way that is more original.
I remember
Beyond
when we were
cliche.
talking about Umberto Eco's translator once, and you used the phrase like that
dead to language.
Dead to language. I love that. Like, I still use that actually.
Yeah, that was, I think he was talking about Italo Calvino, same translator.
Oh yeah,
William Weaver, but he was talking
about
about Italo Calvino kept wanting to use the word feedback.
Yeah,
and he was like, that you can't
use it the way you want
the way
to
you
use
want
it.
to. Like, it's dead. It's a total cliche at this point. And Calvino just loved the sound of it and thought he was being very like clever by using this English word, and Weaver just had to keep taking it out, like in the translation. I love that. Dead to language is the way Weaver put it, and I thought that was such a brilliant.
It's really good.
It is really good. We even have like individual writers. If we overuse a word, we're like forbidden from using it for a few months. I definitely overused cute at one point this winter, and I'm not allowed to use cute till May, basically.
Nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty good.
That's good. It's good that you have active editors.
It's a good system.
We did that on The Walking Dead season 1.
Oh, nice.
There was no how you holding up.
Oh,
It's
man.
crazy.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because
so
it's a
good.
survival thing, right?
Yeah.
It's all about people who care about how the other person's feeling.
Yeah.
And we had between myself, Gary Whitta, and then Mark Darren, and then a couple other people kind of filter in at times. That was like the core people writing content for the game. And without having to say anything, I remember just realizing that there were like 15 how you holding ups. And I was like, to the gang, you will not use the phrase how you holding up. If you see the phrase how you holding up, you will talk to the writer. It will be stricken from the game. Yeah,
That's
Nice.
super good. Yeah, that's really,
I mean,
good.
it's really challenging because you get there and you're just like, how you feel? Oh,
Shit like that actually drives me crazy. I feel like there's
but it's also the meaning. Sorry, go ahead.
no. Continue.
Oh, what you realize is that it's just the laziest form of writing. It's just the laziest thing because there's always something way more specific for a character to be curious about.
Yeah.
And you would never say that to your friend who you knew a lot about or were getting to know.
Yeah.
You wouldn't.
Well, there's
you know
a
what
lot
I
of things you wouldn't say. You know, this starts to like become meta and double back on itself, because at this point we like people of our generation or like the preceding generation or people younger than us as well. Like I sort of grew up in an era where you can be weirdly pop culturally omnivorous and just kind of have this terrifying just array of pop culture shit in your head all the time. And so which is where things like supercuts come from of, you know, like there's probably a
you
how
look
you
like
holding up
shit,
super.
yeah. Oh, I
yeah.
guarantee
look
you
like
there's
like
how you
shit.
holding up.
Like we've got
supercut,
company, you know, fucking.
Got a bad feeling about this.
Quick aside. Adrian Fennell from Valve, I played Dota with him. He's from Venezuela. When like we get jumped on in the middle, like somebody comes out of the woods, his hilarious like self-aware bastardization of "we've got company" is "we've got customers," and it's so good. Oh no, we've got customers!
Nice.
It's so good.
That's actually more a result of his Valve service-based economy indoctrination. No, we don't ever have company. We have unserved customers.
Exactly
We
right.
have guests.
But actually, I think that this is going to turn back into.
Well, the thing
this is going to support the thing you're about to say. But go on.
Well, I don't know, but the thing I was
think it
going to
will.
say is that I think now those things have reached a point where you can't even say them in life without it almost being implicitly like a reference
Pastiche.
or like a
Or,
pastiche, exactly. And so,
Or I guess an ironic reference.
exactly, yeah. Or if you don't mean it that way, then you know the other person might even kind of chuckle or bit, or you might realize in retrospect, like, oh, haha.
Right.
It's like this thing, or it's like this thing that characters say. It's a thing that characters say.
Right. It's like saying I'll be back.
Yeah, or it's like
Yeah.
a thing I hate that drives me crazy because it seems so forced to me is when someone is like does something that both characters know is like unforgivable or very bad, and one character says, "I'm sorry," and then the other character says, "So am I."
Oh
No
God.
one says that, but it's
Yeah.
crazy how common. It's like insane.
I think I've written that.
How far?
I hope I haven't.
It goes,
I don't think I have. But like, I just got like a weird bolt of fear, like where I left the oven on or
Yeah.
something. I was like, oh God.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's crazy. There's things like
sorry,
that
Chris.
that are just everywhere.
sorry.
And like,
You're supposed to call and response to that right there. Yep. Yep.
Your eyes were actually saying, so am I. Unfortunately, this is radio.
Oh,
but
good.
yeah, that shit is weird.
It's almost worse when people like make a game out of it and it's awful and dorky and it's like, oh, are you keeping score? Like,
Oh
who
yeah,
got
you can
the most
descend into like
references today?
reference bingo, and that's unbearable.
I almost feel like
at
that's
times.
worse sometimes than the phrases themselves. Or,
I
or sort
hate
of yeah.
references. I hate referential humor. I especially hate it in like in media. Like I hate it. Although I just wrote
What do you
one
mean
in
by
Firewatch. But
What do you mean by in media?
I hate like in-joke references that aren't part of the characters getting to know each other or something. Where it's like, oh yeah, was that thing you put in this scene a reference to this? I hate that question, and I hate the idea that that's somebody's intent. Where it's like, oh no, we put whatever in there because we're trying to make a reference to Ghostbusters 2. It's like, just make a fucking reference to Ghostbusters 2 then. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, I don't know.
Do it.
Yeah. I could probably really guilty of that.
The
though, at
version
same
of it that
time.
drives me crazy is of referential humor, I guess, is that it is sort of actually just a substitute for humor.
Right.
Like making a reference to something becomes the humor in and of itself, whether or not anything funny has been said.
And I think that's sort of the sniff test, right?
Yeah.
Where you're sort of like, well, the only reason this is being said is to be communicated that it's known, I guess.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing that I've heard of before. Hey,
Yeah.
you know, like
yeah.
I recognize it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in games journalism. Gonna throw that out there. There's a whole lot of that. A whole lot of it. Again, I'm not allowed to do that.
I'm also not allowed to. We're not allowed to criticize games journalism
I like the sort of
Yeah.
the version of Danielle, like the version of
while you're here, at least.
you could be.
Yep.
I like the idea that you are sort of like implicitly discussing how awesome you and your coworkers are, but in a way that makes it sound like you're being penalized. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we're not allowed to do this terrible thing. We're only allowed
to
be
write
excellent.
beautiful
Like,
prose at polygon.com.
Yeah.
I don't know about other places.
There are some people in your industry who think they write beautiful prose, and it is impenetrable.
it's garbage.
That's not language.
garbage.
That is not language. That is a collection. That's
that
like
is an exploded thesaurus.
right.
Word-
It's like
word
somebody saying, "I'm
salad
going to cook you a
died.
meal," and there's just like an egg in its shell and like a fucking bologna in a package.
Yeah, but like something really
like
exotic.
like a lettuce with like roots and dirt attached to it. It's like, okay, this is all food.
One of
It's
those-
all on the
There you
One of
go.
those,
it's all on the
like,
plate.
one of those
There's your
fruits where if
meal.
you don't cut it the right way, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weirdly sliced.
and it's all there on the plate
There's just
together,
some
and you're just
blowfish.
like, ta-da!
There you go.
Yeah.
Figure it
I
out.
scoured the lands far and wide for the ingredients in this masterful
And you're like,
dish.
this is fucking garbage. And they're like, that's organic butter lettuce. And you're like, yeah, but it's covered in dirt and worms. You just picked it up off the ground. Anyway,
I understand.
a lot of words picking up off the ground.
Yeah, there's a lot of walls of words.
But that's in any writing. I think it's just
It's
because it feels it's inexcusable in games writing because the thing you're writing about is like video games. Like, it's
I feel like it happens
inexcusable.
the
Like just
most-
fucking be plain, invert the fucking
Yeah.
pyramid, like concise, clear. Find some facts that I wouldn't have known had I not read this thing, and I'm gonna love you forever. Like the Hindustan Times AP article about Firewatch.
Oh, it's AFP. It was
AFP.
France Press.
Yeah.
I
so
believe there's
good.
a plug here.
No. That's not a story plug. There was just one, one AP.
It was an
association.
AFP like newswire story
Yeah.
about the Firewatch game announcement, and it was the like most sharply written, like most concise, readable, well-informed piece.
Like it had gone to the website, found two things that weren't just like from a press release or from
Sure,
another
yeah.
blog post, referenced them in a really like cogent sort of like what's what I'm looking for like processed way.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the developer hasn't lost their sense of humor, comma, quote, thing, done. It was just like news.
Yeah, it's like
Journalism.
someone who knows how to put a sentence
Yeah.
together. Just like bam, 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 bam. It was
really
impressive.
refreshing.
Yeah,
I hate that it
nice.
was written about us because I'd rather it had been written, but like
Well, they probably write all their shit.
maybe the
that way.
AFP video game person is just on fucking
just
point.
on point. Yeah.
Deserves to be on Air Force One, like interviewing the president,
Very
who does no press, by the way. He goes on Funny or Die, but he like hasn't done an interview with the fucking New York Times paper of record in like 6 years. Anyway, it's infuriating.
Yes. Journalism.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks,
Good
Obama.
journalist.
Yeah.
Yep. I was waiting for that one. Yeah, no, it's
We've kind of gone out in the weeds here because I was going to talk about humor that is both referential and fucking amazing. Fucking South Park game is goddamn good.
yeah.
So why is it good?
Tell me about
Good.
this because I need to be convinced for sure.
It is good. Do
Yeah.
you like South Park even a little bit? Do
I
you
mean, I used to
appreciate
love
South
it.
Park?
I used
Okay,
to
done.
love
That's
it.
all you need.
Okay.
If it didn't like harm you in any way, it's
No,
not
I mean,
like a
like
friend who like
going
slapped
back.
you and
So
settled
South Park and I have a complicated relationship because
Okay.
it's definitely like,
Let's
okay,
unpack that
I'm
first.
kind of like this hardcore feminist. I guess I can say that. Feminist cabal. Give me my cash. Watch out. So there are definitely things in South Park that are shitty and I think are problematic, but I definitely
What's funny
used
is
to
I think
love
in the
it.
text you're
Yeah.
correct, but somehow you do that. Maybe this is like a fucked up thing people do. So I might talk myself out of believing this while I'm using my mouth to make words. But I feel like looking at all of Trey Parker and Matt Stone, I always get their first and last names.
I think you got it right. Yeah.
Looking at all their work, I feel like a track back to like the source, like if you go up to where like the glacial water is coming off the fucking mountain, I feel like you guys would probably share a lot of core values, actually. You know what I mean? So I think I think some of their values get manifested in their creative work in a really sort of fucked up way, which then gets co-opted in a really gross way. Like
Sure,
sort of
yeah.
like the Archie Bunker problem a little bit,
Yeah,
but less
absolutely.
obvious, but more convoluted. I don't know.
But the
because
same general
I definitely understand where you're coming from.
I mean,
But for
I
some
also-
reason, it's like less
Sorry.
insidious in South Park because I feel like it was like that Colbert thing this week or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Where it's like, that's a funny joke. Like, because in context of what he's making fun of, the Washington Redskins.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing he's making fun of is actually the thing he's being accused of.
Yeah. Like sometimes I feel like they are making a comment about the world through the kids who you are really empathetic for because the South Park kids are like the protagonists and you
Right.
have feelings for them, even though they're
but they're not always
politically, even though they're wrong, capital
Yeah.
W.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's the thing that also makes it complex is that since it's a comedy, I think a lot of comedies do this and it can make that sort of intent and meaning fuzzy. Is that they a lot of times comedies just arbitrarily decide whether their perspective characters are going to be used as like the speaking truth to power character or as the representing what's wrong character, and then the
I
narrative
completely
voice of
agree
the
with
show
you.
itself will, or the work or the book or whatever will.
Well, that was Chappelle's problem a little
contradict
bit,
it.
right? Because he could sort of like morph into these two versions, right? Where like I'm representative, but I'm also not. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like that gets confused by people
Yeah.
who aren't like critical studies majors at Baylor or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know why
yeah.
I picked Baylor.
Baylor.
I picked a very religious, all-black university
Very
in Waco,
nice.
Texas. The end. I was gonna say
Interesting
What's
connotation
so
there.
funny is I was thinking like Tufts, which is the other fucking realm of the spectrum, and I was like, Tufts is too intense. And then I went B. This is all happening in my brain. I was like, Brigham Young. Like, no, that's not quite right. And then I was like, Bleh. And I've been watching March Madness, and
Baylor.
I was thinking about last year when Brittany Griner was a kick ass in the NCAA women's, and I was like, Baylor is where it came.
There went.
That's my whole brain in like
That's
a
pretty
quarter,
cool.
like a tenth of a second. So yeah, I think sure they have media
God.
critical studies at Baylor, but it also sure that it's stilted or slanted one way.
Speaking
Yeah.
of religion and
Yeah.
these guys, I remember seeing. I saw the Book of Mormon with my mom on Broadway,
awesome.
I've seen it.
and it's so my mom. My mom is not like an incredibly dogmatic religious person, but she definitely like is a religious person, and like her like relationship with her God is important to her, and she goes to like mass most weeks, and we sat there watching the Book of Mormon, which was like I was very concerned about this experience.
Sure.
And
yeah.
like I feel like for the first 15 minutes she was kind of uncomfortable,
Mhm.
and then by the end she was just like, that was delightful, that had such a nice message.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Like she was
That's what I've
really-
heard from Mormons, especially. Like I've heard
yeah.
Mormons have said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like I grew up in a very Mormon town, And
I had a good Mormon friend growing up.
yeah, and I've heard the same thing where it's like, no, it wasn't offensive. Yeah, which I think is actually pretty wonderful that they're able to pull
I
it
agree.
off. Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of saying. It's like, well, those guys have it in their bones to like. It feels like if they were sitting here, that's like, oh, you guys are decent guys,
Well,
but you're still responsible for the
South
shit you
Park
put in your
also-
media.
Yeah,
there's
see,
another-
You're still responsible for that shit.
There's another thing
I
about
agree.
South Park that is similar to the thing I was saying about characters being either the perspective character, like, or being either the conscience or like the thing that gets contradicted by the conscience of the show, which is that I think also South Park has sort of oscillated sometimes like episode to episode between having a social voice and just not caring about it at all. And I don't think that is I haven't watched South Park in a couple of seasons. I haven't really watched it at all recently in the last several years, but like definitely I feel like that is true even going back to the very beginning of that show.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm sure there have been big, broad evolutions in South Park's voice over the 15 years or whatever, but I feel like ever since that show started, it's been kind of waffling between having like a strong social message and like just being hilarious when it wants to be.
Well, what's funny is, and I was just,
Which is not inherently bad,
it's
but it does
still
make it hard
super,
to judge
it's
the
super
voice.
troubling, right?
Yeah,
It's just like
yeah.
it's always moving. You can't really pin it down. And I have the same thing. First off, I really like the game a ton, so we'll talk about the game. But I want to, because I cut you off, I want to go back to
That's
unpacking
okay,
your relationship with South Park because I think I want to hear it. But there's a like one of the classes in the game. This is even really fucking hard for me to say. It's so funny. So you can choose between like fighter, like wizard, something, and then the fourth class is Jew, right?
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, but like
Yep,
that and that
yeah.
like very like obtuse anti-Semitic thing has been in South Park for a long time.
Yeah.
To the point where it gets homogenized with it comes from like Cartman's characters being just the worthless shit.
Right.
You know, just a disaster. Like just the worst. But it gets homogenized into the entertainment in a way that I feel like for its audience is sort of poisonous.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that is the thing that makes me uncomfortable. But then I have to like divorce myself from as a member of society and appreciate it as a text
Right.
to like get past it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Where I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just consuming this in a vacuum with
For
my
sure.
brain,
No, it's-
not my brain in context
that
of
thing
all
is-
the idiot kids who are like, what? You're a Jew. It's like, you can't say that like that. That's a
Yeah.
pejorative when you say it like that.
Yeah, well, that's what's hard about something like that becomes a franchise, because now South Park has like
Yeah.
hundreds of episodes, and now that like in a version of the world where South Park was like a thing that existed for 2 seasons, or like was a movie, or like
Right.
what was like a special, like that you can like that joke can be a thing that is much more pointed, but like, and probably was until it was times 8,000, right? Like
Yeah.
over 15 years. But then once it becomes like a franchise, and now that's just like a hook in the South Park world,
But yeah,
then it's like, does it still have the actual same like kind of I don't know, self-parodying kind of quality that it did? I don't know.
right.
Does it?
What's funny
I
is
don't
I
know.
did it's so funny. Well, I didn't choose the class because I was like, I'll be a fighter.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna play it again. I'm starting a new character. And I'm gonna choose it for like curiosity reasons because I want to see how
Yeah.
like
What that actually means.
because I
Like,
think
what is
those
the
dudes
game?
are fucking smart. I think those guys are really, really super like hyper
right,
intelligent guys.
and they probably don't dislike Jews, I'm gonna guess.
I'm gonna guess that they
hopefully
don't. Yeah. So it's interesting to me because you have to make a choice about everything. Especially, it's easier to see it in a game, right? Like when you think about a TV show, you just think about like, especially if you watch the South Park documentary that's on Netflix. It's just like we have 3 days, bam, it's fucking out. And like when you're just like on a tear for 72 hours and have to make something creative, you're gonna say crazy shit.
Well, also
It's like
Whatever's
being on
in the
stage.
back of your
Also
brain.
something
yeah,
being
it's
on
gonna
stage.
happen.
Also, something can be in a show for the duration of time of like 3 frames, whereas in a game, even something you intend to be that the case, the player can just sit there and let
And
it
stare at it.
sit in the
And-
middle of their screen for 4 hours if they
Yeah.
feel like it. You know,
And really, like the whole process of making a game. This game took so long to make, and I guess was like had troubled times at Obsidian from time to time, from what I understand.
yeah,
But it's you think about you have so much longer to sit with your creative choices. We have a very short schedule, and that's all I ever think about. I get tired of shit.
on Firewatch.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh god, like we've thought about this 3 months ago, but like, oh, maybe we'll get rid of it. Because you just can marinate on that stuff.
For sure.
And so it feels like if it makes it in,
there must be a reason.
you either just
so doesn't mean it's a good.
Yeah, you have
reason
amazing
necessarily,
blinders
but it's
on, or you
considered
made a
by
really
someone,
considered
yeah.
choice. Yeah, but Can we talk? Let's talk about South Park.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of what you were saying right there about media literacy is tremendous to sort of my opinion of South Park and my later informed opinion, me at 30 versus me at 21, when I thought it was all hilarious and great and who cares. And, I subscribe to the whole idea of, they can say anything they want because why shouldn't they? Because everything's funny because they do equal time. They take shots at everyone.
Right.
Which I now think is somewhat of a problematic viewpoint because folks in the wider world aren't necessarily media literate. They'll watch something and they'll kind of take it in, and like you're saying, like kids will be like, "Oh yeah," they'll make Jew jokes or whatever it is, whatever's going to happen. If we lived in a world where media literacy was as prominent as straight up literacy, being able to read words on a page, that sort of thing, I would have much more patience for this kind of thing, and I would have much more understanding, and I would enjoy it more. But I sort of worry, and I can't help but worry about sort of like the way it's going to affect folks who aren't as media literate or who don't have, way too much time, like my ridiculously useless college degrees.
Or who aren't scanning things for subtext. But
you know what, though? It's like, there's something to think about. Because I think about, like, try to remember, like, being a kid a little bit. And I think there's something about just being lucky enough to, like, be raised by folks who, like, try to put some values in you, where when something steps over the line in media, right, where you're like, you watch the first time you see I'm trying to think some of the comedians I saw like just say crazy shit.
I mean, the first time you hear a certain slur or something in comedy.
Oh, you know, Chris Rock. So I remember I was fucking for some reason, I was a little white kid growing up in Wyoming, obsessed with Chris Rock.
That's awesome.
Like, I had every Chris Rock album. I could probably sit here and if I heard like the beginning of one of them, just go with every word.
That's so good.
Like, and there was something I remember the first time I heard Chris Rock, and it was so casually, it was using all this racist language. It was so casually mean and so casually intense. And I remember like, I don't think I feel right about this, but that put me in a position where like, as this like not educated person, but emotionally educated, I guess. But as this not educated person, to start having to make a relationship with that in culture. And I think that's valuable. Like, I think that is still a valuable experience. But like, so it kind of comes back to the onus of like, it's really important to like raise your kids, right? And like not, but the point is like, what do you do? And obviously it gets to the point, right, where like being raised right is sort of a privilege. It's a very lucky thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I don't know, like I'm in that spot, right, where it's like if the world, if everybody had good parents and took media literacy 101 at 13, like how bad would the jokes have to get to make you feel that way? To really like make you go like, oh fuck, like you can't. I don't think that's right. Like comedy's had a history where like people have stepped over the line. It's like when what's his name, Gilbert Gottfried made the 9/11 joke a week after at the roast of Pam Anderson or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was that.
Yeah. Yep. And it just like...
It's like, not cool, man.
And it just... People mutinied and he just kept going. Like, I think there's always... And that was a room full of super intelligent comedic minds. Yeah. So I think comedy's always going to go to that place where it's really, really bad. But I think the thing where it gets funky with South Park is like... There's like South Park... like onesies, like you can get a South Park lunchbox.
I think there's a lot of value in the people who are
South
going
Park
to
video game, for Christ's sake. Yeah. That's why kind of why I like it.
There's so many South Park video games, although this one's good. Apparently.
This one is really good, and I think that's why I like it, because it feels like the humor didn't have to go through. We're at a time finally where like everything that is something like South Park doesn't have to go through a different apparatus to get into a game than it would a show or it would a movie.
Yeah, right. I know what you mean.
And that's so refreshing.
So rare.
It's so refreshing.
At anything beyond the indie scale.
When you play this game and like somebody swears or you hear a joke and you're like, oh God. Like, it's not like gross out or anything like that, but like super just like to the, like gets right into your soul about like something just mean or something like very, very true. I can't
you never hear that in games. In games, there's the version of that always has like an ellipsis and then kind of
it's like it's got the like, I'm in a video game wink to
and like a 1.5 entendre, and you're like, oh, I hate this.
Yeah,
like that's it's so toothless, even when it thinks it's not being. But then it'll be something incredibly exploitative in terms of like violence or sexual imagery or something. But then the language side of it is like the dumbest shit ever, and you're like,
Right.
this seems like it's the opposite of what it.
And the thing
Of
with the
how that
South Park game is like
balance
it
should
is
be.
all like fucking on point, like from
Yeah.
a like complete control of the tone and execution of what South Park is handled. It's perfect. Everything is like, there are jokes that are in a cutscene. There are jokes that, like, when you're running around, you hit the X button and you knock something over that make you laugh. There are jokes in enemy barks. There are jokes in the menu when you meet a new character. There are jokes in the combat. Like the first time you use a skill and you're not expecting the AV that you get, it's amazing. Like one of the first skills you get is the ability to use a baseball bat, or a ball and a baseball bat. And you throw the ball up in the air and you hit the ball. And that's like, and you have to kind of like, it's an action RPG. You have to like throw the ball, time it. There's no meter on screen. You just gotta kind of wait for the ball to come down. It's perfect. And the feedback you get from success and failure of that is like, I produced one of those like, oh, like a laugh that was like getting punched in the gut. And the fact that the game can execute what it is, like can pull off South Park air quotes in every phase is amazing. Like mechanically, and obviously the writing, aesthetically, everywhere is just like so refreshing,
So
because
I have a
games
question about
never
that.
fucking do that.
Yeah, so I have a question related to that. So, do you think? So where do you think this game stands? Like, I don't know, aesthetically, or like in terms of like message, or just anything, like whatever, anything about it, from the perspective of someone who isn't already steeped in South Park and doesn't get that part of the pleasure from it, of like identifying how like on brand it is. Like
it's
for
like-
example, like the reason I bring it up is because the thing I'm curious about, and maybe you're not qualified to talk about this yet because you didn't start a character in this class, but like if you start up the game and you see the class selection list and you're like, oh, Jew, I'm going to do that. Does the game, within the text of the game itself, does it contextualize that in the way that makes it not problematic in the same way it would, simply because you understand
For me,
why that is
yeah.
like a running joke in the show?
I might
in
be
the
giving
first
it too
place?
much credit right now, so I might retract this in the future. But to me, it feels like, yes, it feels like that doesn't feel like a reference to the show. It feels like it feels like that could have been. There could be stuff like that is just as like over the top and big. Like that's a class choice.
Yeah, that's huge.
That
Right.
wouldn't be a direct reference to the show.
Yeah.
Very easily. You know, I think it feels like seeing it for the first time in the game would feel the same way and would be handled the same way as if you saw it for the first time in an episode that you were watching online or whatever. You're like, oh, I'm going to pick this episode, and you're like, oh God. It doesn't. None of it feels winky to me. None of it feels like this is a reference to the show, which is what's amazing about it to me. Like, it's so easy to just be like, we're just going to put all the jokes from the show in one place. And like, it's got that sort of like the Simpsons movie feel of like, here's all of Springfield, you know, or like, here's all of South Park. It has that sort of like expansive, because we're bringing the franchise into a different medium. We're going to like give you like the whole picture. We're going to like, and there's this guy and this guy and this guy a little bit, but it doesn't feel like that. And I think that's really important. You know, I feel like you just have to say, what if somebody discovered South Park via this game?
Right. That's what I mean.
And that's what it feels like, that is considered in a way that is really kind of remarkable. It also does that mechanically. Like, it's an action RPG that, I don't know, I probably have a little too much nostalgia for. Like, one of my probably top 10 favorite games ever was the Super Mario RPG on the Super NES.
Oh God, yeah.
So it's a
Great game.
So it's like that. It has like turn-based combat, but has action elements of timing and things like that, with zero fucking quick time UI. Like it's like the thing glints and you got to block or whatever, or like you throw the ball up in the air and you have to hit it when it comes down, and there's no sort of like golf timer
How
while
do you
that's
know what button
happening.
you have to press and stuff?
I mean, it teaches you that,
Okay.
and like the bottom menu, but it doesn't have like QuickTime UI where like
Okay,
a
sure.
meter
So,
is
yeah, the
going
golf
up, or
meter,
like
blah,
the
blah,
A
blah.
button
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
blink or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
But it's a really in-depth. Look, I mean, it's more in depth than it needed to be or should be. Like RPG system, like you have, like you get status effects and you have to dispel them with all these different things, and you have like really think about your strategy about how you're going to get through this fight and things like that. Like the fights are like, it's an Obsidian game. Like it's a legit, like these guys have been making this type of game for a long time. They know their shit. And it feels like an introduction to turn-based action RPGs for people who maybe never played them, but like South Park, it just feels like they're like, again, doing all the things right. Like, oh, you never played this type of game? Don't worry about it. You're going to enjoy it because we're going to execute on it really well and make sure you don't get left behind. Oh, you've never seen South Park? Don't worry about it. The fucking jokes and the story is just good. Like, it's kids playing like Lord of the Rings style dress up in their neighborhood, but it taken to like the extremes.
Right.
I almost wonder
I really like that a lot.
Yeah.
So good.
I was going to say, I almost wonder if I should give it a shot because I've really been on the fence about this the whole time.
I want
like
you to
I said,
so you can send me an IM and be like, you are a fucking idiot.
I know, right?
No, I like
you should come back on this show after you've played it because I don't
post South Park
have any opinion really on the actual game at all, but I would be really curious to hear, like, given this conversation so far, I would love to hear an update to it.
Yeah, because I mean, I definitely, all the things I've said before are certainly what I think and what I feel, but I also definitely have the ability to divorce myself, in small periods of time to be like, I'm going to just give myself over to this and completely.
Well, so there's also,
you're going to come in here wearing like a Cartman t-shirt.
And we're like doing Cartman voices.
If I could go back to the thing you were saying about
Hanky backpack.
If I were going back to the thing you were saying about media literacy, I guess like one of the things about that is that I think about this a lot too, actually. Like certainly obviously I'm sure not quite in the same way you do because everyone's different, but like,
sure.
As a general topic, I've thought about it a lot and I don't know, I never know entirely what to make of it, right? Because you want to have things that do require a high level of media literacy because that's what's interesting, right?
Absolutely,
like you don't want, you want there to be works that are challenging in that way because otherwise all that media literacy just gets wasted on reference fest, like the shit we were talking about earlier, right?
For
like
sure.
you want there to be a reason for that is more than just like, haha, get it? It's like
well,
Family
so you want
Guy.
the banned books list, the books that people think are dangerous. Like you
Right.
need to have that.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
yeah.
That's what you
But-
want.
Right,
Absolutely.
but you also don't want to be just wantonly exploitative and lazy about it, right?
And
so
contributing to problems and shitty images and
right,
so
for
on
sure,
and so
for
forth.
sure, yeah, exactly. So like that line is really fine and really hard to walk and like probably actually changes over time. Like I remember, I never saw what is the like really famous Eddie Murphy 1980s like special or whatever that.
Oh, I don't know the name of it.
Yeah. In any case, I remember it's somehow, for some reason, people started talking about that like phase of Eddie Murphy's career a couple years ago. Like there's something happened that caused that to be reflected upon.
Eddie Murphy passed away. April Fools.
Oh my god!
April Fools. Got you.
Oh my god!
You totally April Fools me. You dishonored April Fools to me.
We record on Mondays, Tuesdays, whatever day today is. It's the first. Sorry.
Well, the time people hear this isn't.
I know. April Fools.
We were fooled anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the thing. I was not sure whether to be fooled or not, but I didn't want to call you on it because I couldn't definitively say
That he was
Eddie
alive.
Murphy did not.
You couldn't
just
like
die.
go outside and be like, "This is Eddie Murphy." He's like, "Hi, I'm Eddie Murphy."
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
go out.
Yeah.
He's right there.
Yeah.
He hangs out right here.
But the thing I was going to say is that I remember like a couple of years ago, I watched through like, is it Notorious? No. Fucking what is it? I can't remember. It's one of those one word
Yeah,
ones.
yeah,
I think.
yeah. Oh look, it's killing me
I know it's annoying me as
because
well.
I can see the cover of it.
Yeah.
Which is one of those things.
And I
find it. She's
And I watched the whole thing, and like there were two things about it that were incredibly noteworthy to me. One was that it still felt very powerful and raw,
Right.
and like just like meaningful.
It's
And
still
then
yeah.
And then the other was that there was a level of like weird like anti-gay shit in there that was so shocking and
Right.
so uncomfortable without any particular purpose.
Right.
Like it was those two things in like side by side were really fascinating, right? Because
Right.
at the time, kind of all of that content was sort of shocking, presumably for the same reason to an audience, like to the segment of the audience that didn't have to put up like
Because the entire thing is like still progressive as a unit. Is that what you mean? Like,
yeah, it
supposedly to the audience. Yeah,
right. But like some of it was actually just shitty, like right? And it wasn't necessarily identified by everyone that way at the time, because the people who weren't in the position to be shat upon by that section of the thing presumably just read it all in the same way.
You know what's funny though? Like, you should go back and listen to Lenny Bruce, who came before.
Mm-hmm.
So like Lenny Bruce's stuff has all of that shit in it, like to like a crazy amount. Like the most, it's mind-boggling, but it's like absolutely like, it's like fucking historical fact that he was like a really progressive guy for his time, when especially with gay issues, like especially. And there's something about it that is still as uncomfortable, but was just like fucking balls to the wall, the worst. And I think it's like really interesting to go compare. Like, you look at like Lenny Bruce to Eddie Murphy to, you could probably throw like Chris Rock in there from the early 90s to Louis C.K., right? And this straight fucking flat line. There's something about Eddie Murphy though that I think is like, I think it's like because he's just like meaner. I don't know. Like, I don't even know how to say that, but I don't know. You have to hear Lenny Bruce, I guess. It's like, I don't know. I don't read it the same way, I guess.
Yeah. It's either delirious or raw. Those are two of his biggest.
Raw. I think I watched both of them.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm super interested in this discussion. I was just
maybe it's just that they
looking it up.
Video game.
Maybe it's just that they came out on Netflix. Maybe that in itself counts as a news event if you're a shithead like me.
Eddie Murphy did really pass away in 2011.
Fuck off.
I mean, okay, so I will just say this, even though it has nothing to do with video games. I think the coolest thing in my lifetime, and I'm queer, so this is important to me, is that when I was a teenager, being queer was horrible and awful and disgusting. And like, that was the mainstream media's view of it. Now in 2014, I'm not saying it's great or anything's perfect and there's a long way to go, but like, I could get married in California and nobody would care. Like, it would be cool and great and everything. And
I'm really
comedy has actually had
I'm really glad you're on this podcast now and not 8 months ago.
Yeah, no, I know, right? It was a big
for that
deal.
Specific issue.
But like, comedy actually has a lot to do with that. Like,
8 months ago, I would have had a big problem with you being here.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I mean, you would have made him say that.
I would not have been welcome in this office.
I'm a law-abiding American. I abide by the law of California.
If you can't get married
to idle thumbs, you can't get
Totally true. I understand.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Basically near Boston, whatever. Same general culture.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So
did you went to school out there?
Yeah, I went to Catholic school my entire life until college. So, you know.
Your Rhode Island Catholic school wasn't gay friendly?
No, it was not. It was very not
Where did you go to
happy
college?
gay.
Sorry, I don't know.
Oh, Massachusetts, Western Mass. And then I went to grad school in Boston.
The whole state is colleges.
Yeah, everything.
900
everywhere you go, college.
Yeah.
There are more colleges than gas stations in the city of Boston.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Speaking of colleges in like,
and they're
Boston,
both ripoffs.
I was on the
Next Obama.
This is not a full story, but I think about it sometimes and it cracks me up in retrospect. I was on the plane like years ago. I don't know how long ago, 5 years ago, maybe more than 10 years ago. And I was sitting next to some girl and we were just having the like completely idle, like plane, like sitting next to a person conversation. And I was like, "Oh, where are you headed?" She's like, "Oh, I'm going to school. Like I got into the school and I'm going there, moving there to, to whatever." And I'm like, "Oh, where'd you get in?" And she's like, this is like Barner or something. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Like, where's that?" She's like, "Oh, Massachusetts." I'm like, "Oh, like where?" It's like, "Oh, it's like near Boston." And I was like, "Oh, huh, I've never heard of that." She's like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we like, I had this experience of like 30 seconds straight of me not quite hearing what she said to me. Like, what was it you said school? And I realized after I got off the plane, she was talking about fucking Harvard.
I know Harvard.
Like, and I'm sitting there being like, "Oh, I've never
heard of it." She's like, "Oh, it's funny because it's like the first college we had. It's like number one.
Basically the best one.
It's like first and best.
But she was so
sort of like the Coca-Cola
She was so earnest
just
about
because
it.
of her personality type, presumably, she didn't want to be like, it's like the best school. It's the
It's
one
fucking
that
Harvard.
everyone has heard
There's
of.
a movie about it called Stealing Harvard that came out like 10 years ago. It's the college of colleges.
Yep. And she was
like
just
calling
being
video
like
games
so like,
Nintendo.
oh god,
Oh.
it cracked me up in retrospect that I felt like an asshole.
It's so
as
funny.
well.
Is I would have been in the airport, like walking to my next flight or whatever, and be like, I gotta go find that fucking girl.
I know, right?
I know what Harvard is. You're at Harvard. Congratulations. Congratulations. It's a big achievement.
I felt so bad about
I
it.
know what it is. I'm Chris Remo from Idle Thumbs. I know what it is.
Yeah,
I just love to imagine the conversations she had after that. She was like,
Who's this guy?
I was like, this guy, he seems smart. I mean, he
this
seems
was
smart enough.
long
And
before the podcast.
No,
I'm
it's
pretty
during the
sure.
podcast. I decided. You guys were having idle conversations.
he didn't know what
okay.
Harvard was. Maybe he was like Canadian. I don't know. Like, I just imagine.
Maybe he's just an idiot. Just
Maybe
a really
he's-
stupid person.
Maybe, yeah.
Not that Canadians are. I think Canadians are smart. Sorry.
Canadians know what Harvard is. I
yes,
think.
they're probably
Depending
do.
on what Canadians are talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some Canadians who don't. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a Canadian who doesn't know what Harvard is. And there's a Canadian baby who doesn't know what Harvard
Yeah,
is.
somewhere out there, there's a
I was sitting
3-year-old.
next to this Canadian baby on this airplane. Weird. I don't know why he was flying alone. He was an unaccompanied
It's a
minor.
brave little dude.
A brave little
Dudette.
Canadian.
Yeah.
So it's like Canada.
The brave little Canadian. Yeah.
And he was also a toaster.
The movie poster for that, the baby would be wearing a Harvard like sweatshirt.
Little Crimson.
Harvard baby.
Baby Crimson. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
We've got. I had like 9 questions queued up when we were talking about you growing up going to Catholic school.
Oh, that's okay.
But they'll all be very personal. We don't talk about them on the podcast.
That's fun.
It's not a big deal.
It's an open book.
Did you play video games when you were
Yes,
young?
my whole life, the whole way through. Baby Danielle is playing video games.
How did you get into video games?
I got into video games because every other kid who was 4 or 5 was playing a Nintendo.
You're
and
a Nintendo family.
Yeah, I was a Nintendo
That's what happened to
family.
me.
I was in a Nintendo family, rather.
Yeah.
But I played a lot of Genesis games, too. I played everything.
Yeah.
I just loved
I probably
games.
never would have gotten into video games except my uncle bought me a Sega Master System, and that was kind of it for me.
That was
My
the
parents-
beginning and the
yeah.
end.
And my parents actually got into our Nintendo when we got it.
Oh,
My parents used to play Mario. I used to hear them at night.
that's
playing
really
Mario.
nice.
Used to overhear my
That's
parents.
what
at
they were
night
doing.
playing
I used to hear
Mario.
that like it was actually just the Mario pause screen, and they were boning. So
Oh, right. Those are just the sound effects, Sean. Don't worry.
yeah, just yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
Oh.
When
my parents have sex, it sounds like a warp whistle.
They would just yell that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the sound effect, Sean. Don't worry about it.
Play Nintendo.
Oh, yeah. Did you want to like? What's
a
your
break?
path?
Oh.
Like, how did you become a reviewer? Were you like?
Oh, it's super weird. It's
whatever.
super weird. I went
are
to.
we running out? Sorry,
Oh.
I will sit here for all.
Okay, I'll
sit
tell
here
you
for
my
all
life
time.
story some other
God
time.
damn it.
Yeah,
You just-
it'll be fun.
We can come back. We can come back.
Oh, we have a
Just
break.
Take a break. Yeah.
We're gonna come back and
Sounds
talk about
good.
the life story
I just-
of
My
Danielle
life.
Riendeau
My whole
or
life.
the BioShock Infinite DLC. Haven't really decided yet.
I just wanted to.
That's really
we
like
have
my
the
life.
The
you know.
mid-roll. I understand.
Yeah.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, the AMC original series Turn. You can catch it on Sunday at 9 p.m., 8 Central Time on AMC.
Yeah, it's a historical kind of espionage drama about the Culper Ring, which I actually didn't know anything about until we started reading about it. It's pretty fascinating. It was the first American like intelligence network, and it operated during the Revolutionary War. It's a crazy thing that it was not like actually really known to the American public until like the 1930s, basically.
When historian Morton Pennypacker
Yep.
Oh, nice.
pieced together
Yep.
like missives from somebody involved with the Culper Ring with also notes that had been sent to George Washington and realized that they were like the
Handwriting
same
was like-
handwriting.
yeah.
Of course, Morton Pennypacker figured it out.
Pennypacker.
Of course,
Do you
he did.
think people with names like family names like Pennypacker just kind of quietly change them to Packer at some point?
Or just
Because I don't know,
disappear.
I've never met anyone
Penny.
Named Pennypacker.
named Pennypacker.
That was like a late season Seinfeld joke where it was the Puerto Rican Day Parade where they were all trying to get into this one apartment to use the bathroom, so they came up with nicknames.
Oh, that's right.
It was like Pennypacker and
And the traffic was bad, and
Yeah.
Elaine kept going in a cab. I
Yeah.
remember that episode.
so if you like that TV show,
Well,
you're
this
gonna
also
love
was, like,
AMC's original
this
series
was
Turn.
also people like creating code. Like the Culper Ring was named after like two of the spies in it who went by Samuel Culper Sr. and Samuel Culper Jr., but that also wasn't their name. That was
Right.
just their like made up name.
Yeah.
But then they also had like code numbers. Like there's Agent 355 is like there's like a female agent made reference to in like various like fucking missives, and people still don't know who she is, which is a fascinating thing. Like they apparently there were several like women spies in this organization, and they were like valuable in part because clearly at the time it was so assumed that women would just like adopt whatever their husband's beliefs were and like not have like any
Wouldn't be part of a spy ring.
Life outside the home.
So he was
Yeah.
like not suspected nearly as much, but like ended up becoming super important in the
So,
actual.
we haven't seen the
reality
show
of
yet,
thing.
so we don't know how much of this stuff is integrated into the text, but we're definitely going to check it out. And you should
presumably
too.
if the show goes for a while, like this, there's more of this stuff. I don't really
Yeah.
know what the plan for that is, but it seems like a super fascinating topic. So
Yeah. And that's Turn. It's on AMC this Sunday, I believe, at 9 p.m. 8 Central Time.
Yep.
God, actually, I was gonna. Did you see? I don't watch Saturday Night Live, but I watched Louis C.K.'s opening monologue.
Oh, I didn't know he was on it.
Yeah, he hosted this week on Saturday, and his opening monologue, he ended up talking because we were talking about the women's suffrage.
Oh yeah.
He's like, women have only been allowed to vote in America for like 98 years. So like this democracy in America is 98 years old. Like fuck that. It's not a 200. Yeah, it was really good. It's a very good bit.
If that,
like
right? Because I mean, like
Women's. So the sad thing about women getting the vote is that the first state to offer the vote to women was Wyoming because they weren't allowed to have a senator if they didn't have enough voters to hit the minimum. So they're like, ladies, fucking just get out there and
Equality.
give it your all, non-men.
Non-men.
wait, senators or representative?
Representatives, that's what I
Okay,
meant.
yeah.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to have
They
representatives.
get fucking 2 for no goddamn reason.
I know, that's the
Even though there's
Wyoming
nobody
stat.
fucking there.
That's like the big stat bump. Wyoming secretly runs most of the country from like their two bumbling idiot
an
senators.
individual Wyoming is like
A Wyomingite.
an individual Wyomingite is way more powerful. Like,
If they had
federally.
senators who could read
If they were literate.
or
Media
give a
literate.
fuck about anything that wasn't their tiny little narrow, then yeah, they would be really powerful. That's correct, Chris. Yeah. Anyway. You know what John McCain from
We
like
have the worst here in
1998 could have
California.
done as a Wyoming senator? He could have kicked ass. But you know what? They had Al Simpson for so long, and that guy's a badass. That
Yeah.
guy's really cool. Really nice. Like, yeah, ahead of his time. Like, one of the greats. Yeah. Definitely top 10 senators of our
Senators?
time. Yeah.
Top 10
Of our time, for sure. He's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, that guy's legit. I mowed his lawn once. I mowed his lawn once with my buddy Ryan Calger.
I heard that as I met his mom once.
I met his mom once.
And
She's
that's
dead, actually.
basically
She
the
died in
same-
1968.
Similar.
Yeah.
You're basically making the same claim, essentially.
It's like, I knew a thing.
Oh, I meant
did a
meeting a
thing.
person versus cutting some grass is a little different, right?
No, but it's the same in terms of what it suggests about your familiarity with. Like, if you meet
Well,
someone,
he lives in my town, which is a town of like 6,000 people, or
That's
it's
what I'm
more
saying.
now. So it's like as a
saying
kid, I feel like he knew me by sight, but I know he really didn't, even though I talked to him a few times. But it's weird to be like, sorry, this is not on the podcast, but it's weird to be a sixth grader and a fan of a senator. That's a weird thing.
That's kind of
like,
adorable,
yeah, I was
actually.
super
Yeah,
into
that is
like,
pretty
yeah,
good.
because The West Wing came out a little bit after that, and I was like,
also,
super-
I love the evolution of like one of the great senators, and then like the reveal of like he talked to me a few times.
He is though literally one of the great
I mowed
senators.
his
He's
lawn.
literally fucking one of the fucking lions of the Senate from like the early 90s, 80s. He's a fucking badass. Good guy.
I believe you.
Yeah.
He wrote a memoir called Writing the Old Gazoo.
Oh, good.
Gazoo? Yeah, Gazoo.
Gazoo. What does Gazoo refer
Like
to?
right in the kisser.
Like in the-
Oh,
kisser.
nice.
Yeah. Popped him in the smeller.
Meanwhile, we had, Ted Kennedy, who was the liberal lion, but probably killed someone.
They were probably friends. Well, whatever. You can't make a democracy without scrambling some eggs.
There's that.
I don't know if there's any skeletons in Mr.
Al
Simpson's
Simpson's closet.
closet.
Just all those guys he killed.
Just all those people he murdered.
All those
on those
people
elk
he
trips.
punched in the Gazoo, I guess. There's them.
Just all those gazoos that he got right up in.
Yeah.
You know, the Gazoo is extinct because of Al Simpson. It's a problem.
Al Simpson, I murdered the gazoos.
That's his follow-up memoir.
No more Gazoo.
Yeah. Where he looks back on his life through a different lens.
Sayonara, gazoos.
That's a different lens than I thought.
Publisher is really...
His
this whole
publisher is
gazoo
so
thing-
good. His publisher, like, you gotta
really
really just put the
milked that.
Gazoo thing to bed. I did.
putting the gazoo thing to bed. Al Simpson.
Don't milk your Gazoos. Or
God, that's like one of
mow
those
your lawns.
one of those weird, like, semi-successful book-only comedians who, like, God,
Like Dave Barry?
yeah, like kind of like that, where they have, like, you look at the other books written by, and
And
it's
they're all
just,
like, yeah.
like 17 different configurations
Riffs on the
of a
same
given
fucking thing. Or like
Yeah,
Jeff
right.
Foxworthy. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
You know Al Simpson, though, right?
I mean, I know of him. but I
Simpson
don't-
Bowles, he's the guy who
yeah, I don't really know all that much
He
about
was
him,
like,
so
hey,
maybe-
look, Obama, this is what you should do. And everyone went, forget it. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, you asked.
Yeah.
Politics. We've been all over the map on this Idle Thumbs. It's the couches, man.
it's good.
They fucking get
The couch
inside
is
you.
really...
And we actually have another sponsor this week, who's a new sponsor, and that is NatureBox.
It's new to you, but no longer to us.
Right. They were super great and sent us a sample of some of their products. And they do like healthy snacks delivered to your home or office in a like nice pre-selected bundle. And all their stuff is like no like hydrogenated oils and no trans fats or anything like that. It's all like super well made, really tasty snacks. They sent us some like chocolate covered almonds. We had some chili lime pistachios. Chris, you had a favorite. I think it was the peas.
It was, yeah, like ranch dusted, like crispy peas.
I was given one of those peas, and then Chris ate the rest of the peas.
I really liked them.
He liked
I ate
the
the rest
peas
of them
very
tonight.
much.
I
Yeah.
finished them tonight.
We had them at the Campo Santo office, and they were a big hit over the past week. So thank you to NatureBox. You should check them out at, I suppose, naturebox.com. And
It
you
is
can
naturebox.com.
order like various sizes, I think. Don't they have like 3 sizes of,
Yeah, they have
of
various
good?
like box configurations.
Yeah.
They also, I'm looking at, like, I didn't realize how many of these goddamn things they have because we got like 6 different treats.
Maybe
I think.
8? 6 or 8? We got a bunch.
But like, if you go to their actual website and you scroll down, they basically have infinite of them.
well, I mean, that might be
Many
false
of which
advertising,
are
Chris.
Many
other
snacks.
flavors of crispy chickpeas, including roasted sea salt chickpeas, which I want to eat. Like, I don't know.
So if they,
That is a form factor that I enjoy.
you like
Like a little spherical.
that's the unit you like your snack
crunchy,
delivered in.
crispy
chickpea.
thing with like a bit of like
A freeze-dried
a
pea
savory
with like a dusting of a
treat.
flavor
Yeah, it's what I.
that is all natural and not full of crap for you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
will just eat them all.
So yeah, you probably, if you listen to this
I'll eat it
podcast,
at
you might
the
be
point-
listening to it at work.
Yeah.
And you might get up and go get a
They
snack.
got
But I'm willing to guess.
Peppery chickpeas are listed
my
here.
God.
God damn it!
You know,
Lots
if,
of
I think they
chickpeas.
haven't. I think
Country
they might.
ranch peas. That must have been the ones that we had. Country ranch.
Country
peas.
Ranch, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of peas.
Do you want to finish the peas thing before I have my
Well, I'm
list
just
on?
scrolling, but it's taking forever because they have so many different things.
Do they have infinite scroll?
They have these chili lime pistachios, which
Don't
have
get them started
a
on
lot of
Infinite
chili
Scroll.
in them. Actually, we found. I don't know.
I really like the thing that was good about their chocolate covered almonds is that the chocolate wasn't like, it's not that super sweet like it's not like
Yeah,
M&M's
well, the
chocolate.
dark-
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
called dark cocoa almonds. Sean.
Oh my gosh.
Please,
Sorry, dark
Give me a
man.
goddamn-
I'm really bad at
what are you,
this.
fucking animal?
Yes.
They got smoky barbecue peas. I find.
Oh my god, I would be interested. Okay,
I'm not making this up.
I'm interested in those. You know what's funny?
Oh my god, this is the one I want the most. They have mandarin garlic peas.
Oh my lord.
Just dump them into my
Just
shitty maw.
basically
Just fucking
yeah.
do it.
fill his
I'm
mouth with a
horrible.
backhoe of mandarin garlic peas.
Oh god. Salted caramel. Those look like peas, but they're just zoomed in. I thought they were just really zoomed in.
It's a trap.
Different thing. I'm sure it's good.
But you like the form factor.
I'm not. I mean, it's fine. I just want the more peas.
I think the color threw you
I
off.
wonder if
Dear
they'll-
NatureBox,
do you think
send
if we-
peas,
Do you think
please.
because we have a relationship with NatureBox now that they would put together a like custom pea, the Idle Thumbs pea box? Actually, that's I'd say it.
P-Box.
Maybe not a good idea. Never mind.
I don't know.
Thanks, NatureBox. NatureBox.com.
Yes. That was one of our little warm-ups when I did
I gotta scooch closer.
You did what?
when I did theater 12 and a half
I
billion
think
years
when I
ago.
did computer.
When I did computer.
I'm doing computer, mother. Don't go upstairs. I'm doing computer.
I'm doing computer. Leave me alone.
God, I probably yelled that in some fashion when I was 15. I'm doing computer.
Leave me alone.
Mom!
You're doing this the wrong way.
This is really
I
fun.
did it.
Yay,
Did
good
it your
job.
way.
Good job.
You're like the Burger King,
The Sneak King.
the sneaking
Like
king.
Sinatra, I'm doing it my way.
Oh.
It's really
Oh.
telling that your cultural reference was Sinatra and mine was
Sneak
Burger
King.
King.
Shocking, because just earlier
Earlier
today,
today. No. I said I'm glad my reference was
Oh, right.
Sinatra and yours was
Ken
Ken Levine. And then you said fuck you, and I said it's okay, Chris. I know you're a gamer.
That's when I said fuck you.
Brutal.
You are a gamer. You're one of the best gamers I know. You're like a pretty serious gamer. I would call you a core gamer. Chris Remo, core gamer.
Brutal.
Core
talk
gamer.
about what
Core gamer and Chris Remo is actually an anagram. Don't even look at those letters or words. Distrust that they are.
It's obvious. It's too
Just
obvious.
no.
It's too obvious
I need
that
to
Chris Remo
verify.
is just an anagram of core gamer. It's not important to look at the letters or count them or
I want to
reorganize
talk a little
them.
bit more about Doge 2048 this week.
If you open your mouth about Doge 2048, that's it. That's it for me. It's worse than Spelunky. I didn't talk about this in South Park, but I think the biggest the biggest selling point of this game is that you feel like a little kid. You fucking feel like a kid walking around your hometown.
You fucking feel like a
That's
kid.
You're gonna
Really?
fucking feel like a kid. It said on the box.
Feeling
you
like a
feel
kid.
like a kid walking. Like it starts in your room, and you're just like thup, walking around your
It's
room,
really cute.
and it just feels like being a kid. And they do this great thing at the beginning where it's the first image is your parents talking to you about having just moved to South Park, and there's like some mystery there about why you maybe had to move, and they're talking at you and asking you questions, and it just cuts to your face that is just like blank, just like not
Yeah.
As
responding,
a
and there's
kid.
no verb for responding. Your character never talks. You don't have dialogue trees or anything like that. So yeah,
Huh.
but it's perfect because they're like, so what do you think about that? And you're just like, and they look at each other and like, it's like it's
Yeah, right.
basically how was school today sort of situation,
yeah.
and you're just like, and they're like, okay, we're gonna keep talking because we're parents and we love you, and it's perfect. It's like perfectly done. And from Jump Street, that first interaction, to just walking around like rifling through stuff and like parents telling you to go outside and play with your friends and like go make friends and like go do this and go do that and like you can't come in here, you can't do that, no way you can do that. It's like you forget that it's just the perfect conceit for. Because there's adventure game stuff in it, obviously. It's like, oh, go do this thing for this guy, get this thing. It's RPG missions. It's the perfect conceit for that stuff where it's like, oh, I can't go there because I'm a little shitbag. And nobody gives me any respect.
Yeah.
It's really appealing. Like I love games that
See?
make me
I see
feel
the twinkle.
childish
That was
and
actually
like
something-
a youngin.
There's a twinkle in a little eye over
Yeah.
there.
I really like that
Twinkling.
about Costume Quest, even though it achieved it in a
Yes.
totally different way. Like Costume Quest has spoken
Can I compare
dialogue
this to-
from the
to Costume Quest a little
go
bit.
ahead.
So the thing that I forgot about extremely high production value RPGs is how important tons of diverse content is. Like I think back to the 3 hours I played the game, 4 hours maybe. I played with Dennis, so we like hot seated it, and I keep seeing like all these different scenes and like all these different character interactions and like all the enemies. Like I didn't grind through. I mean, you do a little bit, It's like, oh, go down, defeat all these kids from down the street, and you got to get in like 4 or 5 battles. But like, I didn't sit there grinding the same type of enemy for an hour.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
20 minutes or 15 minutes, and that is huge. Like, I want to see. It's like it feels like Costume Quest with a budget.
Right,
Like,
sure.
Don't mean to like sick
Yeah.
burn Costume Quest, but it feels like Costume Quest with a budget.
Sure.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. But that I can totally understand. I more meant just tonally, like again, it's I think it's achieving it in a totally different way, it sounds like, because your character in Costume Quest does talk and there's like a lot of back and forth dialogue, but like the way that kids see the world and like the kinds of things they comment on and like the things they choose to bother saying something about. Like I thought was like super well represented in Costume Quest. So I thought it was like really like evoked that like worldview in a super powerful way.
Yeah.
And the only reason I bring it up is not because these games need to be directly compared, but because that is such a rare thing in games at all. Like there are games that are for kids, but that's kind of a different. That's like not the same thing.
Yeah.
Like
They're talking at kids rather than recreating the experience of being a kid.
which a kid doesn't necessarily need because they already are one.
Right. But you know what's funny is like,
sense,
like I think that's something I like. Maybe it's because I don't know. This is probably a dumb old like
kids usually like to experience upward, right?
Right.
They like to play or read or watch the thing about kids or adults who are older. They were like one tier older than they are, so they can be vicarious. Like,
but what I liked about adventure games as a kid was that I was somebody else, but I was experiencing the world like pretty much the same way I experienced it as a child, but from somebody else's perspective. So like, it's funny because like I don't
looking at all the objects,
right? Like Ben Throttle is like it's not an aspiration. You know what I mean? It's like it's not like, oh man, he's a badass. I want to be like him, like Spider-Man or like Batman. Like he walks around, gets kicked at it everywhere, and like looks at stuff and like internally gets to say mean things to people. I totally
agree with you. This is actually something that I never. And I don't say this as a knock against the game because Full Throttle is one of my favorite games of all time. But that was something I never quite agreed with. Like, when Tim would talk about Full Throttle, he would talk about how he wanted to make this game where like you feel like a badass and like you like are this like imposing figure and blah blah blah. Like that's totally fine if that's like the thing that he like that's where he was when he made the game. Like that's fucking great. I think it's an amazing game. It's super well written. But it definitely never quite felt that way to me. Like I never really felt that way playing any adventure game, so I guess we kind of agree. Like, not at all. That way, like
I'm always just like the guy getting thrown out by the scruff of his neck,
right? Because you need to find a way to make that not happen.
Exactly right.
And but you can't do that without it happening in the first place. And like, adventure games kind of present an odd reality. Like they kind of present a version of reality that doesn't actually exist, and that adults usually don't actually interact with the world that way. Right. But also I didn't really care. And I still don't really care.
Well, as a kid, it just made sense that there was just another living thing that had to go through the same shit you did. It was like, oh, I can't go in there. You can't do that. No, you want this? Too fucking bad. You can't have it. Give me that thing. Oh, you got that thing? It's not yours anymore. Right. Like, like you can have this Apple Core and you can have this, whatever, this other thing I don't want.
I'll put them together. I don't know.
You know what I mean? It's the exact same thing, except you're like, a talking dog or whatever. In an adventure game, or Guybrush Threepwood. But Guybrush always just feels like that's the thing that was always really magical about Guybrush is you just feel the way you felt when you were a kid, but he's still
he's explicitly experiencing that stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas someone like Ben Throttle is kind of just super cool about it. You know what I mean? He's not like remarking upon the fact that that's the case.
Yeah. And South Park is fucking delivers on that front. Like. It's also amazing to just go into every building in South Park, which you can do. And just, who the fuck's in here? Oh, there's that guy from that. Well, maybe I don't know if this person's from an episode, but it got to the point where I was going into places that I couldn't remember had ever been in the show or not. But it just felt like, oh, this is probably from an episode I didn't see or something, with a character who was completely fleshed out and had their own thing and like their own thing that they were like mad about or, pissed off about in their own personality. And all these voices are being done by written by two guys and done by two guys. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's
cool. Amazing to me. I'm amazed.
That ability to walk into
this expression.
I do.
How would you describe
There's amazement there.
I would definitely describe you as being amazed.
You guys are both correct. That is an accurate. You read that.
I would want to play this game just to walk into buildings. Like I love that in games. I love the feeling of being in.
You can
in
text me and be like, "You are a shit," after you don't like it.
I'm seriously feeling a little bit sold on this game against my political beliefs. Basically,
the next time we see you, you're gonna be like calling people Jews.
Oh God,
and just being a monster,
being a terrible person. Evil Danielle was born the day she started playing South Park.
Video games do that. Did you guys see the shit about Leland Yee?
Oh
yes!
God! Oh my God!
Did I?
Oh my God!
I popped up on Twitter twice to talk about two things over the past 2 weeks: Leland Yee and the South Park game. This is the best podcast ever for me right now. So, if you don't know who Leland Yee is a state senator from California who represents San Francisco County. at the state Senate level. And he is probably popped up on your radar if you read a lot of video game blogs over the past like 3 to 4 years.
More than that, even
5, 6, 7, 8
yeah.
years. Because he is an anti-video game crusader. Well.
How the tables have turned.
He introduced legislation to restrict sales of violent video games in California, amongst other things. Has been, and not just through his legislation, but through his rhetoric, has been very, very, very anti video games and the impact they can have on the youth. Christopher, do you want to pick this up, or I'll just keep going?
You can keep going.
So about
you probably know the details.
8 days ago, Leland Yee's home was raided by federal agents for a series of allegations, not least of which was weapons trafficking.
Yep.
So what it seems like, what I've been able to piece together from like the Chronicle and various SF related blogs, is he had a failed run as mayor of San Francisco a couple years ago, after Gavin Newsom became lieutenant governor, and racked up a bill around like $70,000. So started doing fundraisers, also with an eye towards a Secretary of State campaign for this year in the off year, the 2014 election. So at these fundraisers, I suspect, I don't know if I was able to glean this from the articles or whatever, but he had ties to a lot of like sort of like some of the less savory San Francisco organized crime community. But like, honestly, as a political figure, if you're supposed to be out in the community and like getting to know people, you're going to end up at like, I don't know, whatever. I'm sure that's not uncommon, unfortunately. But you combine sort of his ties with his debt, the FBI thought it might be a good idea to like send some agents to a fundraiser and let him write some checks. So, there were things like allegedly coercing fundraiser attendees to maybe like give a little bit more than you're allowed to give, which is I think the maximum in California, at least for the type of races that he's in, is $500. Sort of like, hey buddy, what do you put an extra zero on that for me? Federal agent says, okay. So as they start to get him on these campaign finance charges, they sort of widen their scope of their investigation to the point where they had somebody who was posing as a member of an organized crime community approach Leland Yee, allegedly, and say, hey, look, we have some friends who are from like Russia who are trying to get these weapons through the port of New Jersey, I believe, to I think like the Philippines. He needs to fucking take a geography class, first off. And he's like, is there anything you can do about this? And he said, well, let me talk, like, who are these people and what are they involved in? And he's like, this guy does this. Like, here's the weapons trafficker. He's a fucking like pro, like, arms dealer. Like, he's got a fucking resume or whatever. Here's his LinkedIn. And apparently Leland Yee said, yeah, I can absolutely help you get these weapons through the port of New Jersey. I'll call a guy who knows a guy. I have a friend who can do this thing and whatever. You don't gotta go through this thing and it'll get done. So like these allegations just keep stacking up to the point where they felt they had a case against Leland and also like other members of the like San Francisco like Chinatown organized crime community, not least of which this man, God, I can't fucking remember his name.
But he goes by
Shrimp Boy.
Oh, good.
I think it's like Frank Shrimp Boy Chow.
Oh, good.
The first name could be something else, but I remember it being like something Shrimp Boy Chow. If you should get to the B in Shrimp Boy in Google, and it should tell you.
Raymond Shrimp Boy Chow.
Raymond Shrimp Boy Chow, former Chinese mob gangster, now like chairman of the San Francisco Freemasons, amongst other things. Community
career change.
Yeah. I went on a fucking tear reading about this. I was having a real time. I'm glad I was able to recount any of it.
That's pretty fascinating.
So, gosh, I bet he really enjoys playing GTA 5. I bet he fucking is super good at it.
A thing I enjoyed, there was like one of the kind of just local SF blogs, the SFist, was which is part of some network. Like I
the
noticed,
IST network,
the
I think it is.
People, Gothamist, etc. They like I noticed popped up on Twitter the other day because I follow this blog. How they noticed this like 2011 interview conducted by SF Weekly, which is a local weekly newspaper here, and with Rose Pack, who is she's like an
Oakland community organizer.
No, she's San Francisco. She's like Chinatown based. Like she's like a really well known kind of Chinatown activist in San Francisco.
She's like a political heavy hitter here in San Francisco.
Yeah, she is. She's like tied into local politics here, and like she did an interview with the SF Weekly like 3 years ago, like 2011, and she was talking about trying to, like, one of the things she tries to do is like help promote like Chinese American politicians who are trying to like make a name for themselves in San Francisco. And so the paper was saying like, okay, that's one of your priorities, right? Like helping Chinese American politicians. And she's like, yeah, but I mean, good ones, right? And they're like, well, what about Leland Yee? He's a Chinese American politician. Rose Pack responds, Leland Yee is one of the most morally corrupt politicians I've ever encountered in 40 years. From the first day he stepped in as school board member, lying to get his children to the preferred assigned school using a phony address, selling his services to Chinese American parents who would cut an arm or a leg to get their kid into the right schools. He did all that. I don't think he stood for anything decent in our community except to come in and take money and then claim to be the first Asian this and the Asian that, but he doesn't impress me. He doesn't stand for anything except for corruption and bribery.
And arms dealing.
Yeah, fucking right? Arms dealing.
Let's fucking don't sell Mr. Yee short.
But the crazy thing to me about that is that like
she just casually
The reason it was noteworthy to me is because people who are involved in political scenes, like local or otherwise, but probably especially local when the community is smaller than it is at a national level, like Leland Yee at an official level is higher up than Rose Pack, right? Like that's a
he's a state senator. Yeah,
he's a state senator. Like that's a significant
he goes to Sacramento
thing
and
to just
votes on everything that happens to our state. Yeah,
to just like publicly say about another politician who lives in the same place you do. Like that's significant. It's crazy to me that she would just come out and be like, "This guy."
Well, she has so much political capital. That she doesn't give a shit.
I know.
That's why it's kind of great.
Well, right. I mean, that's for sure. I'm just saying, like that's significant, and I like it. But he never got. Nothing ever got pinned to him until now.
But this
Not
case,
really.
It feels like they were probably building this case for a couple years.
They must have been.
Like this is like some like straight up the wire shit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
don't play video games, kids.
Yeah, they will fuck you up.
They'll make you just like him.
They'll make you just like Leland. I want to take this opportunity because I've always found local politics like absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Like I lived in LA for a long time, and like if you pay attention to local politics in Los Angeles and like how powerful the board of supervisors is there and how fucking insane most of them are, it's bonkers. It's really bonkers. So like if you're looking for something to get into, just sort of like as an observer, I would point you towards maybe your local politics because a lot of shit that's happening there is going to affect your life in a real fucking concrete way. And like, when you drive from your house to your office and go back and maybe stop at lunch, some shit is going to happen that was voted on by some people in a room who are probably fucking idiots. Pay attention because every once in a while there's a Leland Yee, and every once in a while knowing about him, and when his name pops up on Twitter because he's going to jail, it is delicious. It is so worth it. It is like being into a weird sport. And then all of a sudden,
it gets its moment in the sun.
Becomes
an Olympic sport or something.
But also, it's really good to be into local politics because people don't pay attention to it, and crazy shit like this can happen.
Yeah.
The end. That's my fucking soapbox.
And that's also how all or most national politicians get their start.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like,
somewhere.
Barack Obama's not affecting your life. Leland Yee is. Remember that, kids.
Thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
Oh God! I used to have to actually.
Thanks, Obamas, and one Idle Thumbs episode.
Oh my
3.
God!
Jesus.
That's the third.
Yeah, I had a title for this episode, but it might just end up being "Thanks, Obama."
Thanks, Obama, with a little 3. With to the third
to
power.
the superscript. Oh, if we put superscript in, it'll fucking crash the RSS feed. I'm not allowed to do it anymore. I tried to do it last week
Just
with the dagger. I tried to do it with the dagger.
Or whatever. Oh wait,
you know the dagger.
The
Yeah.
dagger symbol.
Yeah,
I like those.
I broke the RSS feed with
asterisk extreme version.
Yeah, I have a footnote that is elegant and succinct. I'll use a dagger.
Yeah.
Or I need to have another footnote on this cereal for FDA.
In case you didn't know, that little cross icon that you see sometimes that serves as like a second footnote after they've already used the asterisk, that is called a dagger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I broke the RSS feed like 2 weeks ago trying to use one of those.
I was going to encourage more people to be involved in local politics because most of the people who are elderly and such, and may not, it's good to have people of all age groups. I used to actually have to, when I worked at the ACLU, I had to.
You worked at the ACLU?
Yes, for a long time. That's actually the job I had before.
That's how I got into
Polygon.
video games.
Actually, it's a funny story. But I used to have to collect every bit of news that had anything to do with any ACLU issue in
Which is all issues.
all of Northern California, which
find.
there are 12 issue areas, each with like 25 mini issue areas.
Sub-issues.
I used to be very, very familiar with everything every police officer was doing in basically California. It was intense.
Right.
It was depressing.
It's a big
but it was
folder,
also
everything.
fascinating.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah. Local politics is a really interesting hobby to have, I find. I promote it.
Yeah,
a
just
lot.
make
and
sure
not just
to-
because you should there's also if you want to go make a difference and vote and do all that stuff, please, that's what you should be doing. But just being involved, paying attention to it because of the narratives, worth your fucking time. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah, it's
as
a
well.
soap opera. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
Really worth your time. You start to really understand what's making a lot of these people tick, and that's the thing that's fascinating.
Indeed.
South Park and local politics.
Speaking of politics, Justice Harrison writes,
That was a reader mail seg.
yeah,
That was really good.
I just started watching House of Cards, and one thing I found odd is how close Frank Underwood, protagonist, senior politician, dog killer, was comfortable being with the press. In the show, he uses Zoe Barnes, amateur reporter turned overnight star via Frank's info, to his own ends, but it made me think of how close-knit game designers can be with the press. As well as gamers themselves. Yeah, I know,
What do you
right? An
mean?
appropriate email to
We're
read
gonna
because
throw.
in the current
I was almost
company-
gonna give a House of Cards season 2 spoiler.
Oh, don't do that.
Have you seen it?
Uh-huh.
Season 2.
Dude,
Oh,
we
you.
had
probably
watched
burned
that
through
thing within 72 hours
Yeah.
of it coming out. It was disgusting.
Do you watch House of
It's
Cards?
fucking gross.
I don't.
Okay.
My only anecdote is that my dad became
This is a
obsessed with
dangerous
it.
situation for you, basically. Is
It
if
does-
you
that's-
were going to
that's-
take anything
that's
away
the only,
from it.
There's
That's
no more
cool.
spoiler of South. There's no any spoiler of House of Cards in the question.
Okay.
So anyway, he says, do you ever feel like the closeness of the gaming community causes problems? If not, what makes it possible for all the vested interests to be one big happy family? Of course, politics and the games industry are two very different things, but with journalists vouching for a rational game staff, the rise of crowdfunding, and user-generated content being implemented in commercial games, the lines are becoming a bit messier. It makes me wonder how much that plays into gamer entitlement and the shitstorms that follow as a result as well. Looking forward to the real reveal of Bleep the Game as well. Thanks, Justice.
It's called
was another
FirewatchTheGame.
email, I guess.
FirewatchGame.com.
Yeah.
You can go to
Bleep.
you can go to camposanto.com or store.camposanto.com and buy your Firewatch merchandise there.
Wow, Sean.
I'm not supposed to do that, am I? On the podcast.
Whatever.
I'm sorry. Can I make a prediction?
Yeah.
That there is not going to be a second reader mail because we're going to talk about this one for a while.
There's a lot of meat there. A
Yeah.
lot of meat on those bones.
Yeah.
For sure.
Actually, you know what's... This doesn't answer the question. It's just an excuse to bring up a related thing that I thought was a really well-put point made by Tom Francis at GDC. I don't think... God, I could be totally misremembering, and maybe he said this on our podcast, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. I was pretty sure he said this over dinner one night. So, like...
It was preceded with, Christopher, don't put this on the podcast.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mention anyone by name. It's just a general trend he observed, which is, fuck off. He doesn't care. Because he made a really good point, which is that, so I forget who it was we were talking to, but someone was talking about how, like, you know, as a developer, sometimes you see things that journals put out and you're like, oh, that's not right, or like, that doesn't represent, like, what I think this should be, or whatever, right? Like, the people being reported on are obviously not 100% of the time going to like the thing that's being reported. That's just
Yeah, of course.
how the
They
entire
shouldn't.
world is always. And, like, Tom Francis made the really good point, which is that there are two kinds of journalists who are frequently disliked by developers. And I wouldn't say frequently, but I would say the kinds of journalists most likely to receive guff from developers, be it in public or in private, right? Because it can go either way, are equally able to be the bad journalist who is just kind of stirring shit, right? And not
Right.
researching their story well and blah, blah, blah. Or an actual good journalist who's just doing their job. Their job just doesn't entail saying the thing the developer wants them to say.
Right.
And Tom Francis was making the point that he's heard from developers equal frustration with both kinds. Because from the developer's standpoint, looking at it from a certain way, it doesn't necessarily matter which it is. They're both frustrating. You know, or they both can be frustrating.
Well, yeah, one is sort of, I'm not going to actually respond to that. Well, I will, but then I'm going to quickly not
I don't
make
even
a point,
think
'cause
I don't even think there's anything to respond to. I
Well, I
just thought it
think
was an
like
interesting
one is like
observation.
if somebody's just not doing like objectively not doing a good job, that's frustrating. I think when you're especially if you're the subject. The other one though is if they're saying shit you wish they weren't saying, but it's true and well researched. Like you fucking eat that meal, dude. That's it.
I'm not saying it's
what I mean?
justified. I'm just saying it happens.
It's funny that
I know that
you
it
mean
happens.
developers. Yeah. Oh, of course it does. I've been lucky enough to not really like been in my tiny circle.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if somebody's critical of our shit, we're just like, oh man, we take it really like especially, and it feels like it's coming from a place of like information.
I'm the
yeah, like
I go out of my way to be as accommodating as possible with people with criticism because I know that you can't ever fucking know anything about fucking anything at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm probably too much that way. You know what I mean? Like
But I
to my
mean-
detriment. But I'm sorry, Danielle, were you going to say something?
No,
God.
I just
Should,
wanted you
because you have
well,
a
like
way
you
more
are the
valuable
only person
perspective.
you've on been on
You've done
both
it
sides.
too. Yeah.
Well, that's actually why
Yeah.
generally why I'm so
We
charitable.
kind of have the
towards
whole Venn
external,
diagram here, right?
external
Yeah.
opinions is because
Yeah.
I have been on the other side, so I tend to give a lot of. I tend to not get bent out of shape by it. It's pretty hard for me. It takes a lot for me to get frustrated, like actually frustrated at something that's
Yeah.
said about something I worked on in the press. Like you'd have to be really beyond the pale. Anyway,
Yeah. Well, this is a topic near and dear to my heart for sure. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm
no
sitting
doubt.
here with you
Come
guys.
into our office. Come sit on our
Right?
couches. Come
Yeah, I mean-
talking to our microphones.
So, yes, we're all in the cabal. It's real. It's true. All your worst nightmares are actually true.
Actually, your worst nightmares are not even. It's things that are worse than your nightmares that are true. Probably.
that's true. Yeah, you
That's
can't
actually
A true cabal goes deeper than the
your
lines could ever
imagination
draw.
is not even capable.
You're actually part
Your
of the cabal.
subconscious
Yeah.
cannot even reach the depths of depravity
This is
that our cabal
It's
represents.
Some
All
Matrix
the way
shit.
down.
Yeah.
My God. Well, anyway, so obviously, journalists are friends with developers all the time. Like that certainly happens. It's a small industry. People, respect each other's work. They care about each other's work, and they become friends because, we become friends with people. I mean, I've been friends with Chris long before I was writing about games full time. Like, I've known a lot of developers for a long time. I work on my own little stupid game projects all the time. Like, I feel like there's so much crossover there, and the way that sort of, I think the only way you can deal with it to make sure that things are not ethically fuzzy is to have a really ironclad policy about who does what, when, where in terms of your work.
Yeah.
I mean, for reviewers, I'm a reviewer. I'm almost never reporting. I'm only reporting 2 weeks out of the year, and that's at GDC and E3.
Right.
During those weeks, I don't have opinions about things, and I don't write about people that I like, have had really close personal relationships with.
But at the same time, like, I think there's sort of this. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, it's okay.
But like, I think there's this misconstrued notion that, like, and especially like in House of Cards, like,
Yeah.
that's not the way shit is.
No, that's the.
That is not the way things are. Like my very close friend / ex-girlfriend is a political reporter in LA, and you have to build relationships with your subjects because that when you actually have a story that really needs to get told that you think is worth cashing in that capital for, you have to do it. So many people, especially like at every level of political reporting, actually sports reporting is probably a better comparison to like sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a relationship between subject and journalist that has to get made so that the like information can come to light and can be pursued through maybe like non-interpersonal means if it starts to seem like there's a real story there. And by real story, I mean something like sort of like the closing of a studio if it's the video game industry,
Right.
or like some scandal that comes out of wherever, like the piece that Rob did on Homefront, that Rob Zachney piece. Fucking A, that was a piece of reporting.
It was on Polygon.
Just gonna come on here and plug your outlet? Is that the That's totally against the rules.
Just saying. Just saying. Go to the Campo Santo store.
Buy your fucking Doritos shirt. I love Doritos.
They are covered in
actually
dust,
don't
the
really
same way
like
those
Doritos.
peas are.
Those delicious.
But
nature
yeah, I
box
think
peas.
that like there's a sort of this misconstrued notion amongst like among people who read journalism that like there's no relationship between journalist and subject, where that's
Right.
just
And then if that-
patently false across every single line of journalism ever.
Or that there shouldn't be ever, like, which is just not tenable.
That's
Like,
why being a
not-
journalist is such an like if you're like a professional, like that's how you pay your bills journalist. It's such a fascinating job, and I think that's why there's so many stories about it and so many films about it, because you're constantly walking this line between personal relationship and the goals of your job. And good journalists are fucking masterful at it. But there are journalists at like a geopolitical level who are like, okay, I'm getting information from this guy who, if they find out he's talking to me, the Taliban's going to come fucking kill him.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but I need to deliver this story, and there's no way that the circumstances of the story are not going to lead back to this guy's fucking house. So what the fuck do I do? You know, like those sort of moral quandaries and those ethical sort of like, what do I do to this human relationship that is producing a thing that people need to know about? Or it's my duty to deliver. Like, what do I do? And there's no right or wrong answer. Like, that's the thing that's so fascinating to me about journalism. But I think with games journalism, like, I would never begrudge a journalist for telling a true story about anything that I did or didn't do that,
even if the story
put me in a bad light.
Unnamed sources. Like, I think I see a lot of comments quite frequently about how stories in which the journalist is not able to name their sources are just inherently rumor or unconfirmed, which I find a really problematic opinion because the sort of unspoken thing that
Watergate was rumor then.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The implication I get from a lot of comments like that is that things can't be reported as true until the company in question has announced it, which just seems like the absolute opposite of what, like, the way that actual news does get revealed is through sources that probably don't want to be named, because that's why the news is like worth reporting, you know, in the first place.
PR didn't announce it.
Like,
so
yeah,
it didn't
exactly.
happen.
Like,
well, it's really difficult with games, right? Because 95% of the reporting is basically a promotional apparatus for a creative product, when there's a lot of it that is actually the business of what's happening and how people are moving within the industry, how people are being treated, how money is being spent, how money is being wasted, how, like, you know, all that stuff is really fascinating. It's fascinating, and I think deserves to be reported on way more. But it's like, it's always going to be this challenge, because at the center of it is this commercial product, right? And sports doesn't even have to fucking deal with that. Like, sports has to obviously sell like the league and tickets and stuff like that, but like, it's different, you know. It's not like there's a review of every fucking baseball game of every baseball player, or something like that.
And games doesn't have the same critical apparatus as film, where there's a tradition of critics that actually sort of inform the art form itself and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it would be ridiculous to think that Roger Ebert wasn't friends with a lot of directors.
Oh yeah, of course.
Like, very close friends. Like, that's
he would
kind
have
of
to
absurd.
be.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, this is the reality. I mean, part of the reality of it is that the reason someone like Roger Ebert is Roger Ebert is because he gives so much of a shit about the thing he's writing about.
Right.
And another category of person included in the list of people who gives a huge shit about that thing are the people who make that thing. So, like, it stands to reason that those are the people, like, they make a different, like the result of that is very different between those two groups, but they're both among the category of people who love this thing so much that they're willing to make their career entirely dedicated to it. And so it would seem kind of silly if people at the, like, press level and developer level didn't ever know each other or find common ground, because they are in it for a similar love of the thing. I mean, in entertainment journalism, that's definitely true.
Absolutely.
You guys find
and then these days, that's like, I think the person in the email kind of alluded to this a bit. That's also breaking down with players and people who are kind of at a weird midpoint, like big Let's Play people and stuff.
That stuff is fucking weird.
Yeah.
That stuff is getting weirder too. That stuff where, like,
yeah, for sure,
bring in a Let's Play person early on your game to get them excited and involved with the concept, so they can pre-play it for everybody. So you get that shit is crazy.
And every outlet is starting to jump on it now too.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, for sure. And then there's another thing that I think a lot of people also get bent out of shape about, which was I forget if it was alluded to in this email, probably was. We've been talking a lot about sort of the reporting side of it, but then there's also a lot of people I've noticed get upset about the notion that a review might be something that isn't fully objective. And like that, I think, is a fairly different issue, but is definitely relevant. Like, Danielle, you're a reviewer. Like, I definitely feel that it's maybe just, not even maybe, I actually fairly strongly feel this way, that it's kind of a mistake that we have allowed reviews, we've allowed the concept, like the messaging around what reviews are, to get to the point that people now have this idea that they should be something that is like objective, as if that's possible when you're trying to express an opinion about something. Like that I think is just like an unfortunate kind of message problem, because I don't think that's ever what criticism is primarily concerned with. Like, you shouldn't. There's a difference between being just in the tank for something, like, regardless of anything else. Like, the difference between like being paid off or just having life experiences and perspectives that make you have certain opinions. Like, the latter thing is like,
there's a between the lines too, where it's like, I think this is probably something people are sensitive to, where like, I'm predisposed to try to enjoy this thing more because I know the soul from which it came.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I think that's a legitimate sort of thing sometimes. I mean, like,
definitely.
There's always like people who like, and this isn't reviewers, but other people in the industry who I'm friends with who are like, oh, I thought this thing you did in the game was really good. I'm like, nah, it wasn't that good. You know what I mean? Where like, I see
where
that you
feelings get involved,
you know,
basically.
like you see what's behind it more than you see the text. You see what's behind the text more than the text itself.
But also, though, like, I will say that I think...
I keep pushing my microphone down because I want to see you, but I'll bring it back up.
I think a critic saying that is different than a developer saying that. A developer saying that, they're looking at it from like a craft standpoint, probably mostly, whereas a critic saying that is probably looking at it from an end result.
I was talking about more like the end consumer who's reading the reviews, who's maybe like, well, I want to know if the game is good. I don't want to know all the great I don't want the review to be stilted because of all the great ideas you knew were behind it.
I understand that, but I also don't think it. I think it.
Which I have empathy for, I think, a little bit.
Sure, I understand where that's coming from.
But it's not giving the reviewer much credit.
I just disagree, really, that there is such a thing as just determining whether a game is good or not.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of the context of informing what leads to that.
That informs a question that I was going to ask. I have two questions for both of you guys. One is more towards Danielle, which is, do you don't answer this if it's going to get you in trouble at work, but
right, of course,
the review apparatus, obviously there's always been a conversation around the number at the end of a review. You know, like something like, I know that Kotaku recently has been doing like, it's just a big green
no, or maybe
no,
later.
Maybe, something like that. How do you feel about that? I feel like it feels like Ebert was just sort of like, watch it, like thumbs up, thumbs down.
Well, he gave stars in his actual written reviews.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It was 5 stars, right?
The thing is, though, I strongly feel this way, and I know this is a matter of opinion, and not everyone is going to agree when I say this, but I read tons of Ebert reviews. I've read hundreds and hundreds of Ebert reviews, and like,
God, they're all online, by the way. If you want to go read,
it's incredible,
and like plenty of other. I mean, I used to read. I haven't in the last couple of years quite as much, but I used to read tons of film criticism. Like I really like A.O. Scott over at the New York Times, and like.
I always read the New Yorker reviews.
I like the New Yorker reviews a lot, especially because like Anthony Lane, for example, is like very. I don't want to say like contrarian because I hate that phrase and I think it's almost never useful. But he often just has a different opinion than other people do, and I like reading it even if it's not always.
He's also more personable than David.
Would you say he's an iconoclast?
Oh,
I don't know. I guess.
Oh,
I just like reading a diversity. I like reading a diversity of opinions, and I take extreme issue with the expectation that reviews should form like a strong critical consensus, and I think that belief is an almost unavoidable consequence of like thoroughly numbered reviews. And I feel like when I read an Ebert review, and the reason I specify Ebert is because he does have star ratings, right? Whereas a lot of these other critics we're talking about don't have any rating at all. The Ebert thing, when Ebert gives something like, I feel like a 3 out of 4 stars from Ebert could represent such a wide range of actual like emotional response. Like I could read a 3-star Ebert review and come away with like super wide ranging like reactions to the things he said about it.
Which is a 60 on Metacritic, by the way.
Oh, yeah, right? God, Metacritic.
Because he just doesn't... Well, 3 out of... I forget if it's out of 4 out of 5. See, that's how much I don't care about his fucking numbers.
No, it's 4.
I think it is 4, so that'd be a 75%.
3-star, Still, 75 on Metacritic, fucking rent it.
In any case, like, seeing like a 7.5 to me feels so much more conclusive and definitive than like 3 stars out of 4 stars. That's like... I don't know. It's hard to explain. I do strongly feel that way, though. I also feel that the way that translates to like the default aggregate site for movie reviews being Rotten Tomatoes is so much fuzzier than what the default one for games is, which is Metacritic, which averages out to an actual specific score.
They take the numbers and they average them by the amount of reviews as opposed to positive or negative.
Right.
And then averaging out the positives.
Rotten
versus the
Tomatoes,
negatives.
and Rotten Tomatoes used to do games as well, but they stopped because every game just had a sky-high 1 because they're all basically positive, even the ones that are, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like this, when you look at scores that way, the game scores pretty much all give them at least a passing grade, unless the game is like true shit. And so it just makes
Metacritic.
a Rotten Tomatoes system almost useless for games, which to me is kind of a sad statement on
Right.
And games criticism.
Yeah.
What do you think, Danielle?
Oh god, I think a lot of things. First, I think that objective game reviews, that whole idea is hilarious. It's actually a satirical game site now.
That is an
Objective
Idle Thumbs
Game
forum
Reviews.
member.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah. Objective Game Reviews
sir or madam, you're
was
wonderful.
born
'cause
out of
it's
an
pretty
Idle
great.
Thumbs forum thread.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that somebody went ahead and actually made an entire website based on this kind of insane idea that any review could ever be objective. I mean, it comes from the idea that like video games are products, and this is a product review, the same way you would review a camera or a TV or something like that, as opposed to like something that's creative and came from, you know, a completely different sort of source. But,
Well, it's funny because I feel like sometimes it's more the former, right? Where like people, because the creative content of games is super, especially mainstream games, is very narrow, right? Like how much you're actually going to get out of the emotional arc of the story, or what you're going to get out of the emotional arc of just the systems and the experience, and what you're expected to like take away from the game. Very narrow, not very high bar. So being able to review a game numerically for its sort of like quality of execution, like it's a fucking
Right.
dive,
Like
you know, like
the new Call of Duty game.
yeah,
Like,
you know, like it's like again, it's like it's a, you know, how technically well put together it is. Feels like most of the reviews that I see are for that, right? Like for big games, it feels like how good is the game at being a video game.
it's grading
Which
as
means-
opposed to giving criticism.
Which means like, and I feel like this is, you know what, fuck it. I can say whatever I want now. I don't know company.
Yeah.
I feel like at Telltale, we got a huge fucking boon sometimes for just being about something sometimes, you know, about being about characters and being about, there's a human being. The game is about a human being talking. Like it was sort of this like, which is also bullshit, you know, like I feel like it was very hard to find a review outlet that would look at a Telltale game the way Roger Ebert would look at it if he was just sitting down to play it as a narrative
setting
experience.
aside Ebert's video game opinion.
Yes.
Yeah,
setting-
whatever, you know,
Yeah,
Roger,
that's
you know
not
what I
here.
mean? But like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because all the noise around one story about like a guy and a little girl surviving, all the shit on the periphery is so far away from any sort of human story that it can get sort of bolstered just by simply being there, by being
Right.
different.
But you're
Right.
saying you wish that wasn't as much of a novelty in itself, and there were more reviews that actually tackled like what is the meaning, like what.
Yeah, I
does
mean,
this actually
reviews
mean? Like, what is
always like in their text, I felt like sort of got into like like this worked for me, this didn't work for me, and I always really liked that. Like I liked reading reviews, but it's like 9. It's like, yeah, you know, like I remember on a couple of them, I'd be like, God, I think we left a lot on the table there. You know what I mean? Emotionally, you're like, oh, we didn't accomplish this. And then also overlooking some of the gameplay and systems and technical things that would not be given a pass if they were in the new Call of Duty. You know,
For
it's
sure.
sort of, it gets really confusing because what I'm trying to say is you have the same number, but in general, it's often being used to be a identifier for the level of execution of a product. And then, like, oh, psych, it's actually the completely subjective, like, creative interpretation of a work. And that gets interchanged so, like easily that reviews, to me, mean fucking nothing. Except if you have a 4, you're fucking lame.
Except what?
If you have a 4, it's bad. You're lame. Bad.
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
No, 4 to 5. No, yes, 4 to 10. Yeah, 4 to 10. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm.
It's a really shitty situation.
I'm really sympathetic.
Anyway,
to
we can't
that.
be friends. So
Yeah, I know. We can't be friends anyway because of this line we have to cross to be friends. So I don't know.
yeah, it's true.
It's all right. We can punch each other at my boxing gym.
I know.
Oh, that didn't. All right, never mind.
That didn't make it into the podcast because we talked about
Good.
boxing for too long during the
Good.
break and got
Glad
cut
I
out.
thought I made a brilliant.
There was a lot of
comeback.
talk about. You thought that was a callback? No, that was not a callback. That was you
It's all right.
being
Me being a show off.
just pulling something out. Yeah, I box.
Hey, I box you guys.
You ever shut up about the boxing?
Hey, I punch people.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really valid. I mean, like what I write, thankfully, I'm in a position where I'm allowed to write subjective criticism about a game, and I'm not being told this is a product review, and you need to, make it like that or make it sound like that. There's no fun factor that we're grading, or the sort of like jokey idea. The old game.
It's always so funny when it was hilarious to me where I would read a review of a Walking Dead episode. We'd be talking about all the things that boom, 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 emotionally landed. Be like, oh, I thought this character was a little weak and underdeveloped. Yada yada yada. And I'm like, huh, yeah, getting a 2 in replayability. Fuck you, man. Like what?
Man.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
graphics 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get fucked. Like
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not the guy or the lady who's doing the review. It's the fucking enterprise.
It's
It's
just
the
the
whole.
assumption
the whole
that these are
system of
equally
that.
important to
it's
every
so
game. That is
funny
like,
to me. Ugh.
I mean, games are everything. Games are nothing. Games are every kind of thing that you can have an interactive
games are Doge
experience with.
2048. Try to review that, GameSpot.
Oh,
We didn't get to your
Take
Doge
that.
2040
Throwdown.
talk. Yeah.
throw down right
Next
there.
week, more Doge.
High replayability.
Yeah.
I would also give it.
Kinda.
How's the fun
I would also
factor?
give it high
Not
marks in the
really.
graphics.
How's
Well,
the
if
fun
you're a
factor?
fucking like threes alike wizard. Like Chris Remo. Yeah, there's no replayability.
No, but I'm saying even
you
that
get to
we-
the fucking
No,
like
no.
galactic Doge at the end whose eyeballs shoot lasers
No,
and you
that's
walk
not what-
away and
that's
like
not-
smoke a cigarette and
No,
come back
I'm saying, like-
and flick it at the screen.
No. Okay, fuck you. God damn it.
Chris
I want to
doesn't
talk
smoke.
about this right now. I really don't. I want to talk about it next week because this is long. But the people who made threes.
Anyway,
who
catch you
I
next
really-
week on Idle Thumbs
who I really-
153.
No, I really okay. So the people who made
Where you
threes
going? Are we
like
gonna
made a
keep
comment
going?
about 2048 about how. Well, I mean, threes. I respect the people who made threes a huge amount. But they made a disparaging comment about 2048, saying it's not as replayable and therefore not as good, or like that was a strong implication in like a statement one of those two guys made, and like that was something I actually strongly disagreed with. Like I don't think replayability necessarily does inherently make something good.
That's
And
what I was saying. We got that
there's
shitty replay
specific
review.
reasons I feel that way about 2048, and within that Doge 2048. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that anymore this week. I just wanted to.
2048
yes.
gets the exact same bullshit treatment by the review press as some of my earlier Telltale work.
I understand.
Clearly.
Fucking horse shit.
Hey, I reviewed Poker Night too. Actually,
I didn't play. I don't know.
You didn't work on two.
Sorry. No, I didn't. I was not involved with that enterprise.
I
that game.
see.
With that video game. I was
Okay.
a part of Poker Night 1 team. But
I see.
2 is beyond.
pretty
Was
cool.
after me.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
like, if
this has been really great having you here, Danielle.
thank you.
Sorry, I pretty much stepped on every single point you tried to
My
make.
my toes are all sore from you stepping
It's
on
'cause
them.
Sean-
See?
Oh. What's wrong with your toes?
Ouch. No, I do need to say on this subject though that we have a pretty ironclad policy at Polygon for reviewers in terms of what we can review and what we can't. And obviously, I probably could not review anything that
Firewatch?
you guys make.
If anybody,
Probably
at
cannot review
Polygon
Firewatch.
If anybody at Polygon reviewed a game that I worked on, who I had any more than a casual conversation with them, I would feel very uncomfortable about that.
Well, no, I mean, well,
Or
I already
anywhere.
know. Okay, I'm not going to like name names, but I definitely know there are journalists who are just like coincidentally
but
good
I'm saying
friends
that
of mine
because of like
who have like
the
told
fucking
who have told me.
landscape, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, for people
Not
worried.
because I actually think that anything bad would happen.
No,
You
I know,
what
I know. And I don't like. I don't know. For people who think there really is some actual crazy conspiracy, like I've heard directly from like just people in the games press who I just like unrelated to anything have just become good friends with, who have just told me like point blank, like like I'm not, like I'm gonna like recuse myself if I like from reviewing like this, like yeah, of course, like that's fucking fine. Like I don't give a shit. Like I'm not trying to like grease wheels here. Like I don't. For who fucking cares? I don't know.
It was the motion you made with the
That
wheel
was
greasing.
some grease.
It was sort of like, I'm not going to say it was a testicular fondling,
Sure.
but I'm not going to say it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. As I say that to their face, I'm The little
like, hey.
is the subtext, right? Reading between the lines.
Yeah.
No, but in reality, I think that I think this stuff is a lot less sophisticated than some people want to think it is. And I guess the reason people feel that way is because they have no way of knowing otherwise.
Yeah, it's an opaque black box. Yeah, it's...
But there's... Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I was a journalist for several years. I've been a developer for, I guess, even longer than that now. Weird. And I've worked in so many different... Like, I've worked in marketing departments. I've worked in development. I've worked as a journalist. I've worked as an editor. And that shit just doesn't really happen. Like, it just doesn't. Like, I remember, I don't know. It's so much less sinister than people would imagine.
Generally, people are adults and they do their jobs.
I'm almost going to keep going. But, like, I do feel like there is a really sinister side to, like, big budget games PR. Where it's like,
they keep
you want to come fucking drive an Abrams tank?
That's the weird thing.
And then play Battlefield?
That's the weird thing that people don't get up in arms about for some reason. Like, the only people who have the resources to actually run something anywhere akin to, like, a cabal would be the people who can afford to fly 200 journalists out to a desert and take them on a fucking gun tour. Like,
yeah.
Which happens.
What?
Which happens.
Yeah, it happens all the time, right? Like,
remember when you got that Mafia tequila machine gun?
Oh, God.
As a gift?
Yeah.
That was the best thing. It was a giant glass Tommy gun, literally the size of a Tommy gun that was filled with tequila.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you had to drink out of the end of the out of the barrel.
That's intense.
Or pour a shot, or just drink straight from the bottle.
there are. I'm not going to name names and whatever, but there are definitely PR teams that have profiles of journalists, and whenever somebody gets to a big site, they've got folders of like, what do they like, what do they dislike? I wonder if I'm in a binder somewhere and somebody's like, oh, she boxes.
You're definitely in
a binder. Binders full of women journalists.
Yeah.
Binders full of women journalists. Mitt Romney
Trapper
said.
keepers full of men.
Yeah. Pretty exciting stuff. That's so much closer to the shadowy conspiracy than anything anybody could afford on the indie level. Like, it's
and honestly, even that for the most part, I think is only in reality concerning when it comes to previews.
Right.
I think by the time you get to the review stage, if there's influence going on, it's in this like constant like cosmic background radiation level of influence that affects all games, where like we do end up in these, I think we have these institutional review problems, but I don't think that's due to specific relationships. I think that's just due to like broad understandings of how this shit, of like how objective reviews should work or whatever. But I do think previews are, I'm a little bit less thrilled about overall. Yeah. I don't really, that was the part of my job as a journalist that I actually hated doing, and kind of was glad to get to a point in my career where I could just decide this is not what I
the film industry I think actually does that a lot better.
Yeah, game previews I feel kind of still feel sleazy to me, and I don't really like them.
Actually, I take that back. You look at previews of Entertainment Weekly or whatever, and they're garbage.
Oh, they're total garbage. Yeah, but
you know what?
It's all fluff.
But also, I mean, I actually just really don't like game previews. I think it's not to say I don't think people should promote their games ahead of time. They absolutely should. It's super important if you're a developer that you get the word out about your game. It's incredibly important. But the way a lot of like large scale game previews are conducted still feels a little gross to me. But anyway, what are you gonna do?
E3, everybody. E3. Yay.
All right, are we done?
I guess.
I got a whole nother point, but I'm gonna let it go.
Really? Do you want to? You don't want to?
You want me to share it? Okay? I think the interpersonal.
Are we reaching like Bombcast length?
Yeah,
levels?
the interpersonal relationships that should be able to be made by journalists are the ones that can't be made, because if you work at an Irrational, or I should say a 2K, or you work at an EA or an Activision, you are fucking forbidden from talking to anybody in the press ever, except when there's a guy there with a fucking clipboard. But if you're like an indie or a small scale studio like Double Fine, it's totally like everybody hangs out and talks about the same shit and like gets the scoop and like talks about dirt and like knows what's going on in the industry and like goes to GDC,
which is better. Like, it's actually just better, because people like, it sucks because I know that there are going to be people who hear that and instantly react negatively and be like, well, they're just in bed with each other. But the reality is, when you don't have those relationships at all, it means when bad shit does happen, it's a fucking clusterfuck of information. It's garbage.
You have to go in and entangle this impenetrable nest. And
It's
just,
like,
it's a he said,
God.
she said of
Have
PR
either-
and like scorned developers.
Have either of you guys watched?
Yeah. Which I think is actually what the person who wrote the reader mail in was talking about, was sort of like the coverage of irrational closing.
Yeah.
Have either of you guys seen The Thick of It, the television show?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, The Thick of It is one of my absolute favorite shows ever. I've watched it all the way
Is
through
that the
3
British
times.
one?
Yeah, it's British. It's a British show about like.
Oh, is that what In the Loop ended up being?
In the Loop was like a
yeah.
spin-off movie from.
I've seen it,
It's like different characters but similar.
Similar theme.
The same
Yeah.
guy though. The same brain trust made it.
Yeah. Same director, same writer and director, Armando Iannucci. And like, there's a great moment in the, I think, last series of The Thick of It, last season, where they have a inquiry, like a public inquiry into like government leaks, like the ethics of leaking, and like Malcolm Tucker, who's this like fucking just lord, like dark fucking lord of it, like political enforcement within his party. He was sort of this Darth Vader figure of
Karl
his thing,
Rove.
kind of Karl Rove-esque. He's like summoned to testify on this topic, and he kind of like exasperatedly at a certain point says like, you need leaks to happen, you need this to happen, because without leaks dark shit builds up.
Exactly.
And it's like,
yeah.
as much of a fucking insane like crazy person this guy is in the show, like he's this like amazingly hilarious, just horrifying individual. He's fucking totally
But
right.
it's totally
about that.
right though, because if
Totally
you're doing
true.
if you're treating your employees a certain way, or like you're like passing along a certain ethos in development, it's like, this is the mission of our game, and it's something fucked up and sexist or whatever, you know, like, but you're doing that with impunity. You're doing that in an environment where you're like, nobody's gonna fucking find out about this because I run the fucking ship and I got like everything. There's no like fucking got all the holes blocked, you know. But if you go home at night and go, if that showed up on Polygon, how would I feel? And go, and you get scared. Okay, now you're probably, if you feel that feeling of like, oh, I hope nobody finds out about this. Like, thank God that we're an ironclad, like fucking locked up, like to the gills, like got this thing figured out ship. Like, if that's the way you feel, like that's not good.
That's
you
the
know, it's
test,
important to like, I mean, that's exactly right. Like, I don't know. Those relationships are actually important for that reason. Because like, if you don't have like a super clear moral compass, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, if somebody found out, oh God, so-and-so could find out about this because it's like, you know, we all have this relationship, and you start to feel bad. It means you're doing something fucked up, and you should probably re-examine how you're running your company or trying to build your product. Like, it's, I don't know. You're completely right, Chris.
Thanks, Malcolm Tucker.
Amen.
Armando Iannucci.
Iannucci is actually right. That's a really good pull. Yeah. That was my last point.
Also, fucking watch The Thick of It. That show's incredible. It's such
Hell yeah.
It's like one of
Takeaways
the
from this
best
week's
written
episode.
Pieces of television I've ever seen.
Play South Park. Get involved with local politics.
Yes.
Watch The Thick of It. Befriend your local journalist.
And work out to Idle Thumbs.
Yeah.
Definitely do that.
Like
That's
we all
the
do.
most important.
Well, you just probably going to need an IV bag after this one, because this was a long, fucking long.
Send your
episode.
questions
This is
to
for marathon training.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you want a different way to experience the Idle Thumbs podcast, like if you're on your treadmill and you've got your iPad handy, you could always go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/idlevideos. I like giving this guy a shout out because he does so much amazing work for us every single week. Idle Thumbs reader Johnny Driggs every week puts out very quickly a fully annotated YouTube video of the most recent episode of Idle Thumbs that is timestamped throughout.
Which is amazing.
It's
So you're like, when did they
amazing.
talk about blah? You can just go look at the
find it.
timestamp, and it's
Link to a timestamped version
really
of it.
awesome. And,
that's
and some people
amazing.
are watching it like straight on YouTube. It feels like a totally cool way to like
Yeah,
listen to the
Absolutely.
show.
Like
yeah.
the video is just the Idle Thumbs logo with like whatever headline is currently
Mhm.
happening in the,
The subject
podcast
matter.
at the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's youtube.com/idlevideos.
Mm-hmm. Thanks,
Yeah.
Johnny Driggs, Idle Thumbs reader extraordinaire, for making that happen.
The last thing oh God.
Can
Also,
I
if you're-
shout out an Idle Thumbs reader? Also?
Yeah. Oh, a
why not?
reader,
Okay,
of course.
person, I don't know what they are on the Idle Thumbs forums, but they're Gritfish on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are hosting a game jam, a public domain game jam, which sounds really cool. So any public domain property, Sherlock Holmes, fairy tales, things like that.
Oh,
That's coming
awesome.
up soon, and that person let me know about it, and I only knew them because of Idle Thumbs. So
We're done.
rad.
Idle Forums.
Yeah.
So many
Really
good
getting it
things.
done recently.
And if you're in the Phoenix area, it's like a week and a half or 2 weeks till ZapCon, which is the big arcade machine pinball
Ooh.
con there in Phoenix, hosted by our friends Kevin and Zach from Kingdom of Loathing and Asymmetric Corporation.
This has
But,
been
yeah.
a reprise of Plug Zone, where plugs rule.
Well, I told Zach
They're
I would
Idle
mention
Thumbs.
ZapCon. And also, the thing I wanted to tell you is I told him I would mention it if he wore an Idle Thumbs t-shirt. So if you heard about it here, you could walk up to him. He's tall, dark hair, glasses, really great guy. And you have to just...
Oh, and he'll be wearing an Idle Thumbs t-shirt?
Yeah. So you have
Excellent.
to go talk to him. That's the one rule. But
Just
yeah, go to,
another example.
but they had like 150
The
arcade
marketing
machines there
machine
last
at
year.
work.
Yeah, just
I was
cozy
asking him, did I tell you about this? They had
relationship.
150 or something, and they're going to have more this year, like arcade machines there. They're just like free
Wow.
to play, open to go
That sounds
in
amazing.
a ballroom.
Actually.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, ZapCon, Phoenix.
Cool. Holy crap, this has been long.
Yep. Good night and good luck.
Good night, bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
What a weird episode. It sounds like that was just a long walk so you could make a pee box joke. We're never going to be done with this podcast. You know why? Because I'm having a good time.